across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah, good afternoon. Welcome to the home of common sense. So much to get through here this afternoon, including, as you might have been hearing, the recent poll showing widespread public demand for immediate political change. I've never known an era quite like it. Almost two-thirds of voters want Keir Starmer to resign immediately and a general election to follow. Support for the Prime Minister is low, with less than 1 in 5 backing him. Significantly, nearly half of 2024 Labour voters also want Keir Starmer to step down. It's grim. Just answer me this. Where did Keir Starmer go wrong? Also this afternoon, the Tony Blair Institute is pressuring the government to approve the Jackdaw and Rosebank North Sea oil and gas fields. Wow. A new paper from the think tank argues that Ed Miliband should fast-track these projects to combat Britain's energy crisis. A 6-year-old could work this stuff out. Details to come. And widespread shoplifting footage showing thieves with bulging coats and backpacks full of stolen goods, often with concealed faces, is common in supermarkets, but with police absent and security barred from confrontation. What effective action can curb this problem? This is a Talk exclusive. You haven't seen this. It's unbelievable. It exposes the challenges on the shop floor. We'll have more details to come. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. That is where you call us. That's where you voice note us. And, of course, you can message 87222. It's 1:05. So, Keir Starmer, the man who won a landslide and then immediately threw it away. But he had a big idea.
And I will never walk away from the country that I love.
Yeah, and this.
I will never walk away from the people that I'm charged with fighting for.
And this.
I will never walk away from the mandate I was given to change this country.
What a nice man. In July 2024, this man, Keir Starmer, got a 174-seat majority. 18 months later, 3/4 of the country want to boot him out. He's unfavourable after a number of catastrophic issues. I mean, it takes a genuine talent to achieve that kind of record. So what went wrong? Well, in short, everything. He was supposed to bring loyally, scholarly decency to Downing Street. Remember those promises. Instead, he looks like a man struggling to explain either the law or what he intends to do for the very people that actually voted for him. His Chancellor, of course, hiked national insurance, killing jobs. 71% believe the economy has got worse under his watch. He's only been there half an hour. Only 7% thinks he's improved the economy. Who are the 7%, for goodness sake? It's all inspired stuff. Starmer's critics have wasted no time.
If a Prime Minister loses credibility, can't command the House of Commons, can't command his own party, doesn't have respect internationally, then it's not in the national interest for him or her to stay.
Simple as that. Then came the scandals, of course. His Deputy PM, Angela Rayner, resigning over a tax scandal. He appointed Peter Mandelson as US ambassador, then had to sack him over accusations, of course, of his association with Jeffrey Epstein. His Chief of Staff quit, his Director of Communications quit, all in under 2 years. Remarkable efficiency, but in the wrong direction. Even half-wits like Zach Polanski have rumbled him.
It is time for Keir Starmer to step down.
That is the most profound thing Zelensky has ever said. Starmer's satisfaction rating has hit just 13%, the worst of any Prime Minister since polling began nearly 50 years ago. That includes Liz Truss, who lasted just 45 days. Where could he go? Half of Britons expected him to be out at the end of 2026, but who replaces him, of course? There's another question. Angela Rayner is the boogie's favourite at 5-2. Wes Streeting close behind, both circling politely, but knives behind their backs, insisting absolutely everything is fine and dandy. It got that bad that even senior Labour members have called for him to go. Remember this intervention from the late leader of Scottish Labour, Anna Sawar.
That's why the distraction needs to end and the leadership in Downing Street has to change.
Yeah. That's the man who's on his side. Change, that was literally his slogan. But don't worry, he said this.
And I will never walk away from the country that I love.
Oh, that's bad, right? I mean, it's really, it sounds like a kind of Muppet character. You can see it almost being created. How are you today? It's very simple. Keir Starmer is not a popular man. I'm asking this question. Where did it go wrong? You've got to look at this objectively. There's going to be loads of you listening to this thinking, I would never in a million years vote for Keir Starmer or Labour. But just try and objectively take a look at this. A man who got a 174-seat majority. That is massive. Pretty much twice what Boris Johnson got. And that was described as a landslide back then. So here's a fella that had everything to live for. Just objectively, tell me this. Where did it go wrong? What was the point where a man who hoovered up so many seats at the last election, and we can talk about share of votes and things like that, but broadly speaking, he's got a mandate for real change. This is a guy that could do a lot with 174 majority. Where did it all go wrong for Keir Starmer? 0344 499 1000. Objectively, where was the tipping point? What was the moment, if you had to put a pin in the political map of the last 18 months or so? Where would it be? What was that point? 0344 499 1000. Let's get a word on this from Giles Dilnott, editor of Conservative Home. Good to see you again, Giles. I mean, it is a remarkable... You've covered politics for a long, long time. We've seen them come, we've seen them go. I know we sound like old git saying that, but, you know, look, the reality is... It wasn't. If this man's majority was 11, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But it was 174, and it only happened 18 months ago, for goodness sake. I mean, he's thrown it away quite clearly. What was the point that it all began to change?
So I accepted your challenge. I don't know where you were last night. You must have been talking to me in my sleep. I accepted your challenge this morning and said, right, I'm going to try and objectively see why it is that I, a Labour friend of mine, paid up Labour friend of mine, stood for election for Labour, agree with, clearly in an election mode, a piece that Nigel Farage did in the Mail, that we don't think he's up to the job.
Yeah.
Where did it go wrong? I'm the editor of Conservative Home. You might say, well, you would say that, wouldn't you, that he's not up to the job? You mentioned, I'm going to go back before the election to when it went wrong, and I've got to accept that the Tories gave the voters a very good reason to go, we don't want you either. I think where it went wrong was when Starmer started to believe that you could become Prime Minister and get a majority just because you weren't the Tories. And they truly believed the idea that when they came in, there would be this huge sigh of relief and, oh, thank goodness you've arrived. Those horrible people have gone and now we can get on with things. And that just wasn't the case. And he didn't. And remember Rishi saying this, and, you know, plenty of people got good views about Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister and Liz Truss as Prime Minister, no doubt. He doesn't have a plan. Well, he didn't have a plan. And he basically outsourced that plan to Sue Gray. Come up with a plan for government. Come up with what we're going to do. I've got broad ideas of what I'll support and what I'm keen on, but you come up with... And she didn't, and it didn't work. And that was because you'd abrogated responsibility from the political to the bureaucratic. She was a career civil servant.
Yeah.
So I think that is where it was based on a false premise in his own mind.
Yes.
We've got a plan. No, you don't have a plan. We're going to be better than them, both morally and competently, but they weren't. And then you've got this message that he simply didn't understand. Change works both ways. So yes, he's changed things, but arguably in all the areas where everyone was deeply annoyed with the Conservatives and wanted nothing more to do with them, he has made those problems worse. Yeah. So now he's in that position. There is something fundamental about the system. It doesn't matter whether you're Labour, Keir Starmer, or whether you're Kemi Badenoch or whatever. When you're flying the plane, it's very difficult to do maintenance on the plane. It's also very difficult to do maintenance on the plane. I mentioned to Reform voters, if you've never flown the plane. Arguably, and we've had to learn the lesson, the Conservatives are going to have to come up with something that says, we know where the plane doesn't work and this is how we'll fix it. Whether they convince people is still a moot point.
Yeah.
But if we go back to Starmer, where did it go wrong? It's when you didn't have the systems in place and the clear vision of what you wanted to do with it. And then when you didn't, finding things that you could do in government and finding out that people were like, no, hang on, I hadn't got a plan for that. I don't like that at all. Or his Labour MPs didn't like it at all.
Indeed. And I think there were moments of, I mean, I had a bit of naivety there because I was, you know, I think I'm not alone in this, but I was thinking back to the Blair Brown years where there was a plan. And of course, we know, and there's been so many documentaries made on this stuff as well. And for those who read these kind of accounts, it's interesting. You look back, it was forensic stuff. These guys had it all worked out. They knew what they were going to do. They were going to change the face of Labour, whether people liked it or not, recalibrate their relationship with the unions. They were going to be progressive, hate that word, but for the purpose of this, it sort of was. And so that made... So when Starmer was kind of shining his shoes ready for Downing Street, I thought, this is going to be something similar to that. And, of course, they dined out on this curious and catastrophically naive belief that just by not being the Tories was enough. And that was all they had.
And here's the difference, Ian. Back in the day, the Tories were terrified of Blair. They thought he was unbeatable for a very long time. And there's a great story, and I mentioned it in my editorial this morning, of quite a late Blair conference speech where George Osborne turns to Lord Finkelstein, long-standing columnist, but also Tory, and just sighs at Lord Finkelstein and says, Danny, why won't he retire? You're not getting any of that. You're not getting any of that with Starmer. If anything, the Tories' plan to build back was predicated on taking a very long time to even get heard. They did not expect Starmer to be, as a Labour person has said to me before, and I've repeated it, didn't expect them to be this quick. They really didn't.
Absolutely.
And I think that's astonished people inside Labour as well. And that's the scary bit.
Indeed. And also there were people on that front bench, I mean, namely Angela Rayner, who were, you know, the minute that election was announced, they're running around the place like someone who just got out of an escape room and, you know, and won first prize. They genuinely thought, right, the socialists are back in town. Didn't really have a plan. Just be left wing, just not be Tories, slag them off, move for, without having a sort of an intellectual underpinning of anything that was informing the words they were coming out with.
To give them one bit of benefit, and it's a very tiny bit of benefit, they are discovering what we tried to tell them, and we have tried to tell others as well. And I don't dismiss people who go, that's not good enough, is governing in the modern era in the 21st century is really very, very hard. It's complicated. There are least worst options you're expected to choose. There are no easy options. There are no slogans that will deliver you. And the other thing is the centralisation, which happened after Blair, of power inside Number 10 means that the Prime Minister, everything's your fault, and you don't have control over everything.
And one thing he appears to be doing, which brings us on to the next story here, Giles, is obviously taking his party more to the left now. He had that we had that weird dalliance, didn't he, with sort of being a bit reformy, which always sounded rather ridiculous, you know, island of strangers and all the rest of it, which he has no memory of saying, apparently. All of that has gone by the wayside. He's realised he's got the Green Party nipping at the heels. Even Corbyn's party not doing brilliantly in the polls, probably won't make a dent in 2029. But, you know, numbers count, and small numbers can be the difference between your man coming home with a seat on the green benches or not. And one bit of evidence of this, I thought, was this speech he gave yesterday where he referenced in negative terms Donald Trump. Never heard him do that before. We don't need the likes of Trump or Putin coming up with initiatives that scupper domestic issues over here. I'm paraphrasing there, but that was more or less what he said. He didn't say that by accident, of course. That was intended.
No, absolutely. And he's been on the receiving end of some pretty appalling comments.
Yes, it's quite mild, really, when you consider what's been said about him.
The thing about Trump is he is not a popular man. Keir Starmer's not popular in the UK. Trump is largely hated by a lot of people. My only problem is that there are plenty of people who would like anything but Trump without thinking too much about what the anything is that they're supporting.
Yeah.
Look, Starmer is in a difficult position with Trump, as any leader would be who isn't going to be and doesn't want to be like Donald Trump. And Trump has foisted a world situation on us that affects us here at home. But that thought is late in coming to Keir Starmer. That's the story of pretty much every premiership, is that world events will come in and kick your program to pieces. You have to be prepared for it. Coronavirus, the Ukraine war, Gaza. These things happen, and you have to make a choice of how you're going to deal with them. And if you haven't been prepared for the idea that that might happen, you have no business standing for the post.
And that is absolutely bang on, and that's where we're at, and that's why we're asking that question. Where did Keir Starmer go wrong? Giles, stay with us, loads more still to come. He's Giles Dilnott, he's editor of Conservative Home, journalist of many years, worked within government as well. Thank you to him. More coming up in a few moments. Throw us your views on this one. You can voice note us too on 0344 499 1000. Serious question. Where was it that Keir Starmer went wrong? Where did it go wrong? I can see we're going to ask this question probably again in a few months, where maybe he does eventually walk the plank. It's now less than 4 weeks to those May local elections. That's going to be not so local, really. You factor in Scotland and Wales. These are really significant for the Prime Minister. Will he be wounded? Almost certainly. Will it be fatal? Quite possibly. Your thoughts on where it's gone wrong? 0344 499 1000. Coming up on 20 past 1. This is Talk.
We genuinely are on resignation watch. There is absolutely no doubt about it. Labour MPs, they say, listen, Keir, your position is untenable. This is all about appointing that rat, Peter Mandelson, who faces a criminal investigation.
Can Keir Starmer survive the Mandelson scandal? We have breaking news for you. We've just been talking about, of course, Morgan McSweeney, the Chief of Staff. We've now had another resignation from number 10. And Keir Starmer's Director of Communications, Tim Allen, has now also resigned. The plot is thickening. The noose is tightening.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk 21 minutes after 1 o'clock. We're talking about Keir Starmer. Where did it all go wrong for Keir Starmer? It was such a bold beginning, 174-seat majority. Let me remind you, this is the man that told you this.
And I will never walk away from the country that I love.
And this.
I will never walk away from the people that I'm charged with fighting for.
And this.
I will never walk away from the mandate I was given to change this country.
Yes, yes. He's so good. Where did it all go wrong for Keir Starmer? Giles Dilnot is with us, editor of Conservative Home, talking through the big stories of the day. Let's move to this one, Giles. Videos that we see all the time, coats rammed, backpacks stuffed with bottles of spirit and steaks, balaclavas and hoods adorning the nation's supermarkets. These aren't people going out in cold weathers to do their shopping. These are, of course, people nicking stuff. But what is actually being done to stop it? No police on hand, it seems. Security guards told not to intercept. And a video sent to Talk shows just what shops are up against. Have a little look at this.
Tesco, third time lucky. I took some cereal bars. I took a few other bits and bobs from that same aisle. And I walked straight out the front door, straight through the barrier, past the security guard. And I wasn't stopped again. I did, however, go back in to speak to this security guard. Hi mate, I'm just letting you know, I'm just basically doing a social experiment. So I've just nicked a load of stuff. I'm going to go and put it back now, yeah? So I'll put the envelope there with the money in, yeah? All right. And now I'll put the stuff back. All right. Yeah? Okay, cheers mate. He just said it's almost impossible to stop. He said even when we do catch them, we can't call the police because the police don't do anything. It's absolutely pointless. The police don't even turn up.
Now, just to be clear about this, this is not an instruction or advice on how to nick stuff. This is really an observation, Giles, about the inability for security guards to act in any meaningful way. I was talking to a mate of mine who is a manager of a large sort of what you might call a top-end supermarket. And, you know, there was the guy at Waitrose in the week, wasn't there, who was fired by Waitrose because he...
Walker Smith.
Yes, indeed. And I said to my mate, you know, what would you have done? He said, I'd have fired him just as quick. And I said, really? What are you talking about? He said, yeah. He said, what, you're going to get your face smashed in for £6 worth of Easter eggs? It's just not something a supermarket or a company can allow their staff to be part of. Now, I partly get that with staff, but if you're security, isn't the clue in the name?
So here's the problem. The security guards don't actually have any detention powers.
No.
So there's a problem. That ethos of I totally get what your mate was saying, that I'm the manager of a store. Our insurance costs would just be insane for risking the level of violence that's used. The problem is that, yes, there are people who are willing to be violent about it and brazen about it. There are also people who just walk in and take stuff who aren't going to be violent about it. It's just that the idea is they know there is no consequence.
Yeah.
Now, we've got to a worrying position, I think, where there is literally no consequence. Retail crime was rising. If you see the exponential rise after the COVID pandemic, it's off the scale, happened under the Tories too, and it was rising, and it's been rising ever since. It's got worse under Labour because nobody's really got a solution to it. That if you're prepared to front up even to the security and they are not prepared to physically restrain you, which they don't have the legal right to do, what are you going to do? The police aren't interested because they can charge somebody, but under sentencing guidelines now, anything that's under 20 quid is not considered to be. So in a way, we've started to normalise, well, that it's a victimless crime. It's just under 20 quid. There is also a body of people who will quite happily tell you this is a problem with the cost of living crisis. You know, these people are desperate, and what can you do? I think we've got to a really, really bad problem when we start to argue that this is something we should just allow. The point, there's no consequence to it. One of the things that I will own up to is the problems with the prisons means that no one's going to get put away for this.
Nope.
I think it's anything over 10,000 now will get you 6 months in prison, possibly if prosecuted.
Yes.
So we've basically waved a flag and said, look, it's now just an occupational hazard that if we sell things in the high street, we must accept that some people will just come in. I think the public are really unhappy with watching videos of people who don't care that they've been filmed.
But
Just
you know
take
what?
It off the shelf.
One of the so within this conversation I had with my mate, he said it never used to be like this. He said because we did used to chase, and he said when he was about 16, 17, he worked for the same supermarket. He's worked his way up. He's now got a very good managerial job with them. He said. He said somebody would go, there's a shoplifter in the pasta aisle. He said, and we'd all pile in and then we'd chase him. He said, I would run around town. He said, I'd be in the NCP, up and down the floors, through the high street. He said, I would regularly get a 5K run in on a weekly basis. He said, that's what it was like. So maybe it did help. I mean, I get his point.
Well, you know what that was? That's deterrent.
Well, that was exactly, because you might get caught.
What there is there's no deterrent. So the fact is that, yes, OK, there's a risk to confrontation. But if somebody knows that they are going to get bottled by staff and then shuffled out and chased, and it would be helpful if the public also sort of said, "Oh, hey, look, hang on, he's nicking stuff, and there's a great tendency. I understand why it is. It's again, it's fear of violence for not getting involved themselves. What's the deterrent?
There is no deterrent. But he simultaneously also told me a story of a security guard. I don't think it was in one of his stores, who had crossed the threshold. So instead of the security guard confronting the shoplifter, sort of, in the perimeter of the supermarket where the trolleys are kept. Apparently, in this particular company, they're not meant to go beyond that. Once they're in the car park, you tend to leave them alone. He went out, followed them to the car park, had his head caved in, essentially, spent 6 months in a coma as a result of this. And it's those kind of stories as to why shops say, do not get your face punched in for a flipping Easter egg or a bottle of whiskey. So it's a double-edged sword, but I do go back to what he said when they used to chase them.
What happened to the people who beat him up? Were they in GBH? No, because there are prison places.
There's no prison places, indeed.
So this one really bothers me, because I think we've flown a flag to say, you know what? If you want to nick it, nick it.
Yeah.
It's a problem. I'm not sure that everyone's got the solution. I'm damn sure they should be trying to find one.
Let's move to this one, Giles. This is Ed Miliband striking again. OpenAI, the tech giant behind ChatGPT, has put its UK data centre on hold, even after Keir Starmer said this.
Mark my words, Britain will be one of the great AI superpowers.
Right. Well, it seems there's only one man that is doing the blocking. Cue the montage.
The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind.
We're building the first fleet of SMRs in North Wales, creating 3,000 jobs.
It is cake, and not just any cake, it's solar-powered cake.
Nothing ever changes.
This is one of those classic examples, Giles, and you know a little bit about this world, where a fairly naive spad has said, look, the thing is with you, Ed, you're really funny, and I think you need to really showcase that because people like you being funny. Of course, the very opposite happens to be true, but I think that's probably what happened, which is why they get him to make these weird videos, thinking, a bit of quirk will do well. It'll play well for Ed Miliband. The rest of us just cringe.
It's funny because I once said the similar thing to him. He was so buttoned up when he was leader of the Labour Party and took far too much advice about being, seen to be serious and credible, that actually he lost some of he has got a natural humour about him. It's just it always seems odd. And when you try to harness it in a video or something like that and a bit of quirk, it does seem odd. The problem with this is we have the potential to be an AI superpower.
Yeah.
The data centers that will drive it, you're not going to build them in a place that's got the highest energy costs in Europe. You're not going to build them where you've got...
Yeah.
But they are huge absorbers of power.
Yeah.
There's a lot about planning as well. That they generate enormous amounts of heat. So one wonders why have a swimming pool next door to it, a community swimming pool or something next door to it. Use the heat. Think about how this process works. Yeah, they're not going to invest in a country where the energy costs are so huge on something that draws so much energy. And the big question mark is this big plan you've got, which he seems to have picked up, literally from where he left off in 2010 when he left.
100%, yeah.
As if nothing has happened in between. And an enormous
The
amount
world
has
hasn't
happened
changed,
in between.
indeed.
As if the world hasn't changed. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, that was a boring 14-year interlude. Anyway, carrying on as we were.
As I was saying.
Exactly. And I'm afraid that, and having been leader, he has a lot of clout within the cabinet, which means it's like, no, we're sticking to this. And the North, when you find people who wouldn't normally be supportive of Conservative calls to start drilling in the North Sea, which isn't, by the way, the sole solution, but it would help.
Yeah.
Then, it's like he can hold the line as long as he likes, but eventually something's got to give, because he hasn't brought bills down, which he promised to do.
Nope.
And this isn't working. And it's certainly, if it starts to affect inward investment like that, you're done.
Well, you'd think so. You'd like to think Keir Starmer would say, Ed, it's been lovely knowing you, mate, but the door is that big wooden thing in the wall. Maybe something like that. Listen.
Trouble is, Ed's probably going to be saying a similar thing to him.
That's very true, yeah, because I think he's circling as well. He wants the big gig back, but it's even bigger this time. Listen, Giles, thank you as ever. Have a cracking weekend. Always good to see
you too.
And hear from Giles Dilnot. Fabulous to have him, editor of Conservative Home. Check out Conservative Home if you haven't. Some of the pieces, the opinion pieces, the editorials are just stunning on there. Bang on in so many respects. He's Giles Dilnot. Thanking him. Over to you. 0344 499 1000. We'll talk to Dan Hodges in just a second. Also, a voice from the left. Ashok Kumar is going to join us too. Lines are open. 0344 499 1000. Where did Keir Starmer go wrong? Your thoughts. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk 25 to 2. Let's look then at this new poll. I mean, it's really quite extraordinary stuff. It's extraordinary from the point of view that this is a government that's only been there for about half an hour. It's the new poll that's found that a staggering 2/3 of voters want Keir Starmer out before the next election, with Labour below the Greens in some polls. Reform, of course, remain on top above the Tories. Is Starmer the real ball and chain on Labour's success, or would a new leader still lead to electoral doom? Is it him? Is it the party? Let's speak firstly to Dan Hodges, commentator and columnist at The Mail on Sunday. Dan, good to speak with you. Look, you're always fair and objective, I sense, when I read what you've put down. I know you're coming for a bit of stick on socials. That goes with the territory. But I'm asking everybody this afternoon, objectively, you look at a man that got 174 majority. You think, well, that's it. You're home and dry. It's a whacking majority by any standards. Biggest for a long time. It should be a clear run, not for 5 years, but for 10. And now, in very short space of time, it's all turned to dust. Where did it go wrong for Keir Starmer?
Well, a number of areas. I mean, to start off trying to, as you say, be balanced. I mean, he did inherit a very, very, very poor hand. I mean, we're all, and I'm just obviously, focused very much now on Keir Starmer and the present administration, but let's not pretend that the previous Conservative administration was a roaring success. I mean, you can debate the size of the economic black hole. Labour obviously overhyped that. You can debate, obviously we've seen the state of the armed forces that he inherited. We can talk about the global picture, etc. But obviously there was a reason why the Tories were cast out of office with such a terrible result. And so it's fair to say, as I say, Starmer inherited a bad hand. But the point is, he could not have played that hand worse. And I think the fundamental issue goes back to the strategy that he was pursuing before the election, which I kind of understand. So he was doing what was called the Ming Vase strategy, which was just, look, the Tories are clearly messing everything up.
Yeah.
Let's not do anything to disturb them. Let's not come out with any policies or any proposals or any agenda that would shift the focus off then and onto us. Let's just sit back and let them lose the election. And that was a strategy I can understand. But I and others at the time thought, including some people, within the Labour Party, thought that behind the scenes, a major programme was taking place and a major body of work was being put in place to prepare for government.
Sort of a Blair and Brown Mark II thing going on.
Exactly. And as we saw, Labour got into power, everybody turned round. If you speak to people, Keir Starmer himself turned around to his staff and said, right, where's the big strategy? Where's the 100-day strategy? To find out there was nothing there. And I remember going into the House of Commons. I think it would have been either the Monday or the Tuesday after the election, and just bumping into a minister on the House of Commons terrace who was having a drink and offered my congratulations. And and they said to me, it's a disaster. And I said, what do you mean? You're going to be in government like 4 days. And they said, yeah, no, it's already falling apart because there's nothing there. And that kind of set the scene, and everything else has sort of cascaded on from that.
And you wouldn't have thought, I mean, we can criticise Starmer for a lot of things, but, we know he's got a lawyerly brain. I mean, that's been his DNA, his bread and butter for years, had the top job in the legal world, of course, as Director of Public Prosecution. So you would think that somebody, I can understand there's quite a lot of ineptitude around him, but just him would be enough to at least be on top of the very simple elements that you've just outlined there, that he would say, look, we need a big plan. We've got to have, if you're a lawyer, you need to build a case. You'd think he would sort of similarly apply some of that logic to government, but it appeared there was none. Just by not being the Tories seemed to be his only card.
Yeah, I mean, you've touched on it. I mean, what were the two things we were told? One of the things we were told is Keir Starmer, his forensic eye for detail, the forensic Keir Starmer. Actually, three things. The second thing was Keir Starmer, the great manager, the great delegator. He'd actually run, this was the thing I was told consistently. He's actually run something, he ran the Crown Prosecution Service. That was so he's got experience of running a big public office. And the other thing, actually, which has surprised me was Keir Starmer a man with supposedly, this sort of quite solid iron moral core? And obviously we saw that used to quite devastating effect in opposition, where he, very effectively destroyed Boris Johnson, the Tories, and portrayed them as, destroying the basic values of decency and public service, etc. And obviously remember how all that was supposed to be transformed under him. But in government, and there was always going to be like this to an extent, because the realities of government are obviously much harsher than the realities of opposition. But he just doesn't seem, and this is something you get consistently from both his colleagues and his opponents, he doesn't seem to believe in anything. I mean, I said just one thing yesterday. We had the situation yesterday where he actually came out with a direct attack on Donald Trump. But what he chose to attack Trump on, when he said, "Oh, I'm fed up of, Donald Trump driving up energy bills." Now that's that's questionable whether that you can lay that or that you can lay a lot of Donald Trump's door, but not that. But then, but that he chose to chastise Trump for what he's doing on energy bills, where we'd literally seen the guy just hours before threatening to wipe out an entire civilization. And on that his words, well, they're not quite the words I would have used. I just don't get it. So, and a lot of people say, and maybe in fairness, criticize me and other commentators for saying, why didn't you pick up and, interrogate Starmer more aggressively? But the reality is, the guy who was in opposition and who we actually looked at in opposition has just not made the transition into government.
Yeah. It's kind of that, isn't it? Just not very good at being a Prime Minister. Listen, Dan, thank you very much indeed for your time. Have a great weekend. Dan Hodges, commentator, columnist with the Mail on Sunday. Let's get a word from Ashok Kumar, Associate Professor, Birkbeck University. Regularly helps us out with these kind of dilemmas. Look, we know that left-wingism, shall we put it that way, Ashok, is a wholly anti-intellectual, morally bankrupt position to start with. But even by that standard, I tried to do that with a straight face. Even by that very basic fact of life, Keir Starmer has got it horribly. I don't know how left-wing Keir Starmer really is, but where do you think, as somebody who would back from the left, where do you think it all went wrong for Keir?
Ian, nobody other than in the corners of talkTV and GB News believe that Keir Starmer is left-wing. He systematically decapitated the left. That was the only thing he succeeded in doing in the Labour Party. He spent the first year in office attacking the left. Now all he seems to do is attack the Greens. He is in no shape or form left-wing. In his policies, he's more militaristic than the Tories. I mean, he's been supporting a genocide. He supported bombing Yemen. He's, provided the basis to bomb Iran, provided the intelligence to bomb Iran, provided the, arms to bomb Iran. And he's continued austerity. In which universe would this person be considered
just on that point, Ashok, it's interesting, isn't it? Do you remember when he was in opposition and Rishi Sunak was very hesitant about putting his name to what was happening in Israel? He kind of held off a bit. Keir Starmer romped ahead of him on that particular point. And I remember thinking, this is rather interesting. So the Tories are just being a little bit, the Tories wouldn't have ticked the box you wanted them to tick, but certainly Starmer was more enthusiastic to back Israel at that point than Rishi Sunak.
Well, let's go back to the actual pre-genocide when Starmer's Labour leadership continuously attacked the Tories for not being as militaristic, saying they're not supporting the military as much, they're not supporting Ukraine as much. Even Starmer suggested, he didn't say, he rolled it back a little bit, said that we should impose a Libya-style no-fly zone against Ukraine, which is potentially nuclear war. And then they rolled it back because they realized it was idiotic. And then when the genocide began, Starmer, not just Starmer, but also Emily Thornberry, also David Lammy, all came out and said, not only is it justified for Israel to start bombing indiscriminately into Gaza, but to cut off water and electricity to a population, half of whom were children under the age of 18. And the Tories, with all their problems, didn't say this. And so there is in no universe that he's ever been considered left-wing. I mean, you talk to anyone even remotely left-wing in this country, they hate them, hate Starmer probably more than we hate the Tories.
I think he's just played a game, Ashok, to be honest. I think he's kind of done that thing of, purporting to not be left-wing because he didn't want to be seen in the kind of Corbyn skin, which would have been dangerous for him. So in order to do that, he's kind of played a certain game. I think instinctively, his DNA would say he's not just left-wing, he's probably a Marxist, and that's not a pejorative.
But, Ian,
I think he's right there in that, and now he's moving in that direction.
What is this kabuki pop psychology useful for? What we can't say what's in his mind, what's in his heart.
But he's the Prime Minister. We're meant to judge his psychology.
No, we're meant to judge what he does.
Well, indeed, but we would question his thinking behind it.
What is he really in his heart and his soul? That doesn't matter.
No, his heart and his soul, like so many of his predecessors, Tory or Labour, in his heart and soul is, I want to be the Prime Minister. I just don't quite know why.
It's pure ambition.
Yeah.
And it's not even the kind of, I mean, take Tony Blair. I mean, he should be tried for war crimes, but notwithstanding, I mean, it was an illegal war of aggression against a country. That's a war crime. But putting that to one side, it was a war crime. It's putting that to one side, he doesn't even have charisma. He comes across
he doesn't.
He comes across not only as sort of corrupt and craven, but utterly inept, soulless, and kind of a zombie government.
Yeah,
they're just sort of sitting there wallowing in kind of empty rhetoric. Every time they put out a statement today in the Guardian, just vacuous. Oh, we need to be more independent. What do you mean more independent?
They don't mean it. You're right. These platitudes, they don't mean anything at all. And we see, he's not completely exclusive in having that problem. And there are many others on all parties of the House. But he's got a thumping 174-seat majority. You'd have thought this man would be, walking on air on a daily basis. But we don't know what he stands for. We don't really know the point of Keir Starmer. This isn't a sort of a centre-right attack on him. That, I think, is an objective attack. I think if you didn't write that in a dissertation, you'd be kicked out of university because it's just a truth. Nonetheless, he is the leader. There's many sharks circling around him, Ashok. Who's the person that could replace him and tick all those lovely, juicy left-wing boxes you'd like to see ticked?
Well, look, I think there's a kind of internal dynamic, of course, in the Labour Party. They're waiting out for the disaster that will be the local elections. The Labour Party, in all the polls, it suggests very clearly that they will be sort of decapitated in many cities, and sort of the heart and soul of the Labour Party will be completely pulled from under them. And so the leaders, the victory that they won in the national elections was built on sand. They won with fewer proportions and percentage than Jeremy Corbyn won in 2017 and 2019.
Yeah.
It was just that fewer people voted. So it was a thumping victory, but it was a mirage, right? And so this will reveal the bankruptcy of the Keir Starmer government, and then he will be pushed out just right after. And the question is, okay, well, how does the party work? So you have Wes Streeting, of course, has been calculating and trying to run for election probably since infancy, running for prime minister since infancy, but he's so unpopular with the membership because the membership are still, pretty left-wing, and he's not seen as a left-wing person because he's not a left-wing person. And so he'll get on the ballot. Angela Rayner will get on the ballot. And it depends on who from the sort of soft left is on the ballot. But Angela Rayner is also not left-wing. And also she's very unpopular around the country. She doesn't stand for anything. She's very unprincipled. And she doesn't have any charisma. I mean, you have to have something. You got to have something. You got to have something.
But many would say, I don't think Angela Rayner, and again, this is not an attack, and whenever you say anything about a female politician, somehow the word No, I know you're not, but I was about to say, I don't think she's very intelligent, and I'm not saying that as a cheap insult. I genuinely think politically she doesn't hit that bar that is needed. But there's a lot of mood music around her. I think she's quite a good performer in Parliament. I like her backstory, the fact that she came from there and ended up there. I think all of that is rather impressive. But the left do appear to like her. And she calls the Tories scum a lot. So therefore, what's not to...
I mean, that's obviously this performance she does, because then it's like handing up the working class background,
correct, yeah,
but without having to do anything that benefits the working class.
Yeah.
So this is just, it's completely performative, and I think it's kind of tapped out. The days of that mattering as the financial crisis we know is looming, that's just, people aren't going to go for that. They already don't go for that, and I don't think they're going to go for that. I don't know if she's not an intelligent person. I have to say I haven't heard her say anything particularly incisive, but it's less about that. I think her instincts are off. I think she doesn't stand for anything either, but she's Starmer, but actually also doesn't stand for anything. So I would say she's likely going to take over, and if she takes over, it'll be even more disastrous for the Labour Party because you'll have the same people in. And I think actually in the next election, what you're going to see, and if you look at the polls, you're going to see the Greens. We look at yesterday, the Kent by-election. It went from Reform 40% in the last election to the Greens winning with 40%. We're seeing a shift towards the Greens. It won't be necessarily a dramatic shift, but it'll be sufficient enough that they can be kingmakers.
Ashok, we stop there. Great to speak with you as ever. Have a lovely weekend. Ashok Kumar, Associate Professor, Birkbeck University. Thank you to him. He bats from the left, that's fine. But his assessment is that Keir Starmer ain't a lefty. I don't think he's got that right. Angela Rayner, not really a lefty. West Streeting, I can kind of believe that. 03444991000. It's a big poll. A staggering 2/3 of voters want Starmer out. That's massive. And he's only been in for about 20 minutes, for God's sake. Where did it go wrong for Keir Starmer? What was the pivotal moment, the tipping point, if you like? 03444991000.
Current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! Oi! You shut up! I'm trying to record something.
Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views. I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This comes in from Jerry, who says, your question should be, has Starmer done anything right? My answer would be a resounding no. Thank you, Jerry, for that. In from Daz in Coventry, went wrong when he was born. It doesn't get any more cutting than that. He's been against the UK in every job he's had. And John in Glasgow says, where did it go wrong for Starmer? It went wrong when idiots voted for him. The man believed the hype. Yeah, he's no Prime Minister. He's no more than a weak, spineless, boring, beige middle manager who couldn't manage to fight his way out of a wet paper bag. I mentioned this the other day. It was when he went to the Middle East, it was like he turned up like a supply teacher, wasn't it, in sensible shoes and a clipboard, rather than a world leader. But then sort of half claiming that peace was down to him. Michael's in Birmingham on Starmer. What do you got for us, Michael? Hello.
Yeah, afternoon, Ian. First of all, I must disagree with your earlier guest. I know plenty of people in America, and Donald Trump isn't unpopular at all. He's actually quite popular. But anyway, that's a bubble. But where did it go wrong for Starmer?
Yeah.
I don't think it has for him. He's doing exactly what he wants to do. He's got everything he wants.
But what you can't see is, like, if I said to you now, as if you and me were sitting in a pub having a pint and we got out a piece of A4 and a biro and said, all right, let's write down what the roadmap is for Starmerism. We couldn't do it.
I could.
Do you think so? What would it? What would be on there? What's the journey look like?
The journey looks like the destruction of Britain as we know it.
Why would you want to do that? No Prime Minister wants to do that. Do they, even weird ones?
Yeah, he does, because these swivel-eyed lefties like him, they've got guilt about colonialism, guilt about our ethnicity, guilt about all sorts of things, and they believe the way to do it is open borders. You know, despite what he says, he's actually opened the borders more. They're even more porous than ever. He put Shabana Mahmood in to make the tough announcements, but that wasn't tough. She knew they would never get through. Anybody could have said what she said, right? And if you look at everything he's done, is anti the Britain as we know it, and that's been his career as well. And that is the way, even the Green agenda, that's the way these lefties think. They want to destroy here. They're mirrored exactly the same by the Democrats over in the USA, who want to destroy the country as they know it, out of some sense of insane guilt.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. They're not. I agree. They're not proud Brits. You don't feel like they have your back at every single level. But they wouldn't be the first. But simultaneously, he surely wants, in his own version, a successful Britain. He might want to change the status and do all of the things you mentioned. But he needs it to succeed, doesn't he? He needs it to look good and to grow.
No, I don't think he does. I really don't think he does. He's a guy in his 60s. He wants to see everything he grew up with dismantled, and his idea of a successful Britain will be when that is dismantled, when the state religion is not the state religion we've got now. And this is exactly what he wants. And in terms of what he's doing electorally, he's playing the numbers game, right? Mark my words, in a couple of years' time, there'll be an amnesty for illegal migrants. They'll all be given votes. That mark my words, before the next election, that will happen. And people saying, oh, we wouldn't vote reform, whatever. Look, I'm not a natural reform voter. I'm not even the biggest fan of Nigel Farage. But can't they see that voting anything but reform at the moment is suicide?
Well, yeah, and within that survey, Michael, quite a lot of Labour voters want Starmer gone as well. Now, arguably, they want something more left-wing. God knows what that looks like. Listen, Michael, I've got to move because the news is upon us. Thank you, mate, for that. Great talking. Michael thinks destruction as part of the kind of veneer, if you like, the image. The stereotypical image of this country is part of their way of thinking. Do you share that assessment? Mark in Wigan says, I say it went wrong for Starmer when he stepped over the threshold of number 10. Seriously, though, I reckon it was how he dealt with the aftermath of Southport, the terrorist attack on those poor children. Yeah, that was that and many other things all happened in quick succession, didn't they? And I think they kind of marked him out, really. Never recover. But he didn't have a plan, and people thought, you must have a plan, but you waited 14 years to get into power. 0344 499 1000. Let's get the news.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 0344 499 1000. Welcome back, home of common sense. So much to get through. We are naturally reflecting, I think it's extraordinary, this, the recent poll showing widespread public demand for immediate political change in this country. Is anyone surprised? Almost two-thirds of voters want Keir Starmer gone, resign immediately, and call a general election too. Support for the PM is low, with less than 1 in 5 backing him significantly. Nearly half of 2024 Labour voters also want him to step down. I remind you, it was just 18 months or 20 months ago that this guy got a 174-seat majority. What an extraordinary story of demise this is. Specifically, objectively, where did it go wrong for Keir Starmer? Also this afternoon, the Tony Blair Institute is pressuring the government to approve the Jackdaw and Rosebank North Sea oil gas fields. A new paper from the think tank argues that Ed Miliband should fast-track these projects to combat Britain's energy crisis. We'll talk about that with the Tony Blair Institute in just a moment. And widespread shoplifting footage showing thieves with bulging coats and backpacks full of stolen goods, often with concealed faces, is common in our supermarkets. We've all seen the footage. But with the police absent and security guards banned from confrontation, what effective action can actually curb this problem? This is a Talk exclusive that has exposed these challenges. We'll have more of that story in just a bit. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news, right here on Talk, 0344 499 1000. So let's talk about the Tony Blair Institute pushing ministers to end the North Sea licensing freeze and reduce taxes for oil and gas producers, a stance that contrasts heavily with Ed Miliband's steadfast commitment to his renewable energy agenda. Here is the Energy Secretary.
Onshore wind, solar power, offshore wind, nuclear, tidal, hydrogen, carbon capture, an armoury of clean power. Solar panels on your local school, your local housing estate, your community centre, turbines, batteries, thousands of projects across Britain, tackling fuel poverty, warmer homes, lower bills. Over 1 million families lifted out of fuel poverty. That is the difference the Labour government makes.
I'm really not sure any of that is true, if I'm perfectly honest. Let's speak with Tone Langengen, who's the Senior Policy Advisor, Climate and Energy Policy at the Tony Blair Institute. Tone, good afternoon to you. Nice to see you. Look, I'm not saying it's easy when you get these big jobs in government and someone goes, look, there's a brief, make it work. But simultaneously, I'm not sure whether Ed Miliband was the best person to implement this. I'm sure you're not going to be drawn on the personalities involved here. But the principle of all of this is that we've got a ton of oil sitting on our doorstep, and Ed said, you can't use that. Tony Blair Institute has said, I think you should. Is that about right?
I think what is completely right is that the Iran crisis has just shown how exposed we are. Our energy security is not where it should be, frankly. So you need a proper strategy to deal with that. And utilising the oil and gas resources we have is one important step of that. But what I would disagree with is that we don't have tons of oil and gas. The reality is that the North Sea is a dwindling basin, so we will need other solutions. But I don't think that is the current clean power plan. Instead, I think we need to be focusing on how we can electrify the economy so that more of our economy is using electricity.
I mean, in literal terms, we probably do have tons, but let's not split it. I take your point that it's not going to last forever. I understand that, and nothing wrong. I think most people, even ardent right-wingers, would say, yeah, if there's an alternative that's better and efficient and going to be cheaper, of course that makes perfect sense. But the Chinese have curiously been quite good at this, haven't they? They've realised that, they're streets ahead with all sorts of things, solar panels, windmills, but they're not cutting off their nose to spite their face. They're going, look, we've also got this resource and we'll use it until it runs out.
No, completely. I think that's exactly the strategy that the UK needs to follow. What we see now is that other big countries are focusing their energy strategies on energy security and energy cost and for competitiveness. The problem is that the UK strategy is still very much focused on decarbonisation as the main goal, and I don't think that's gonna last. And I think we just need a common sense approach to decarbonisation, to energy, which is utilising what we have in the North Sea and also think about where we move to next and what we do further on.
Indeed, and of course there are many considerations when departments or governments come up with initiatives, and what it costs the public is a huge component in that story. We were sort of told by this government that energy bills will be cheaper. It wasn't long ago they were saying it'd be 300 quid a year better off, and that slogan was quietly dropped just before the general election, and now we're seeing prices rocket again against the backdrop of an existing cost of living crisis. So it's not a laughing matter for anybody, this, is it? Because we have very serious problems with the cost of energy, arguably the most expensive in the Western world, and it doesn't look as if it's going to get any cheaper.
No, I think that's completely right. The UK is in a bad position, to be honest. And as I say, this crisis in Iran has really exposed that. So the question now is how you respond to it. So what we've been calling for is that the government needs to change its Clean Power 2030 mission to Cheaper Power 2030. We need to start ruthlessly focusing on how we can bring down energy bills for people.
Can you still hear us, Tone?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I thought you cut off for a second. You just happened to stop speaking, which was fine.
I mean, I can keep talking about this.
No, that's absolutely fine. I was just going to step in on that point in terms of the existing situation with where this government goes. Ed Miliband hasn't completely ruled out the North Sea. So is this the Tony Blair Institute saying drill, baby, drill? Would you put it as sharply as that?
I mean, look, that is someone else's slogan.
You won't get fired if you say it, Tony. I promise you.
We wouldn't steal that. Look, I think what we're really saying here is that, first of all, we've got two projects that are ready to go. The Jackdaw gas field and the Rosebank oil field. Jackdaw could be producing gas that can go straight into British homes and industry within a few months. So for us, that's a no-brainer. You should accept that immediately. And then more broadly, there is still other projects that could be developed. And we think that it is a good idea for the UK to think about what the tax regime looks like, create an environment that is investable for those projects, so that we can kind of get the kind of revenues and the energy security that comes with that for the years to come.
What about the cost? Obviously, is pivotal, as you've rightly said, and that's something that should be focused on. You talked about maybe other areas that this could happen in. That's key to everything. Do you think? What is the Tony Blair Institute view, if you like, on the speed with which this could happen? You mentioned within months that literally oil from those fields could be into domestic homes. What is that saving likely to look like? I don't mean down to the individual bill, but have we got a ballpark idea of whether we are looking at significant change to people's energy bills?
Look, I mean, the reality is that oil and gas prices are set more or less in the international market. So it's not going to have a huge impact on our price of energy, which, you know, I can understand will be disappointing to some of listeners. So the only way to bring down bills will be to think about how we transition the energy system into a kind of how the kind of electricity system is structured. And we have written a lot on this because I think there is a real risk at the moment that we are, for instance, investing in wind turbines that at really high premium prices. So we should not be doing that. We need to start thinking about how we utilize our grid more so that it isn't, you know, basically how do you stimulate demand in the economy so that you bring prices down. So there's a lot of these things that you can do, but the oil and the gas fields are not going to directly bring prices down.
OK, Tone, thank you for your time. Really appreciate that. Tone Langengen, who is the Senior Policy Advisor, part of the Climate, Energy and Policy team team at the Tony Blair Institute. They're saying go for it when it comes to North Sea licensing. There's been a freeze on that. It was always a barking mad thing to do when it's sitting on your doorstep. But I think the overarching thing, she said, it's not necessarily going to just bring it down, certainly not straight away, but being a little more autonomous. If only somebody had built flipping nuclear, those smaller ones, 15 years ago. When David Cameron got in, he could have had a revolution in that department, and we'd all be sitting here now with complete energy security and, by definition, much cheaper bills. Where did it all go wrong for Keir Starmer is the main question we're throwing out here. Daniel is in Epsom. I know you're an old socialist at heart, Daniel. What do you make of one of your leaders, your dear leader, your hero, has mucked up royally? Where did it go wrong for Starmer?
Well, I think it's the worst government in living memory. I mean, without a shadow of a doubt. And I think where they go wrong on the left in general is rather than do what's best for the British people, all their decision making comes from ideology. Every decision that they make is ideologically driven, rather than being what's best for the actual British people. So, for example, if you said they went after landlords straight away. Yeah, those landlords with all the money, and those poor renters will go after the landlords.
Absolutely,
Private schools, we'll go after the private schools.
Workers, we'll go after bosses, because if you're a boss, you're therefore probably a horrible person.
Yeah. And what we'll do, we'll go after people that own businesses, because they're the bosses, and
they're all rich.
All you end, and all you end up doing is ruining the economy. I mean, net zero is probably the classic. People are absolutely can't pay their energy bills. Old people are freezing in winter, but they're so ideologically driven. So it's a bit like the border issue. Every single day in the news, women getting sexually harassed, people getting stabbed to death with screwdrivers, murders, violent attack. We can see that illegal immigration, all immigration, but especially illegal immigration, they're killing British citizens. Now, a government's first duty is the protection of its own citizens and the protection of its borders. Now, how more ideologically out of place do you have to be with the British majority? They just won't listen.
But they don't, when I talk to, in leafy Sevenoaks, which when I was a kid and I used to pass through that place on the train, I always thought that, if you could sum up a kind of conservative hub, it would be Sevenoaks. Now, OK, it has a Conservative MP, but it's an incredibly liberal place, Dan. I mean, I can't tell you, when I go to the pub for a drink, I bump into, those people that you and I would look at and go, what, you think that? Seriously? They don't see these issues in the way that you and I see these issues. I mentioned this the other day. You talk about, I raised the issue of channel migration, and a woman turned to me quite literally and said, what are we going to do about these poor people? And I thought she was joking at first. She thought we were talking about, Bob Geldof and the Ethiopia crusade from years ago. It was almost in those tones that she spoke. And I thought, where have you been? What story are you not seeing?
Yeah, but they're only one incident away of losing their point of view. So the classic one is when you go up to them on the street and say, "Oh, we've got all these illegal migrants. You're on a pro protest. Would you take one into your own home?" Yeah. Invariably, they all say no. Yeah. So what it is they don't want to help themselves. What they want to do is put the burden on everybody. Where I think, and they're only one sexual harassment case, or one getting your phone stolen, or one getting your handbag stolen away from changing their mind. They're not in reality. They're not in the real world.
No, they're not. But I think it's the same, exactly what you were saying, that the kind of Starmer mentality, when it's impossible that the kind of ingrained left-wingism, and I'm not trying to be smart by saying that, literally the ingrained left-wingism within them refuses to see the channel migration crisis as you and I would see. Their brain literally can't go there. It's like asking you to look at a blue wall and say it's red. I mean, they can't do it.
And I think worse than that is that we seem to have had successive governments that, if I was in charge of the government, I would say, right, how do the majority of British people think and feel about this issue? Yeah. But we need to do that. It doesn't matter what I think personally. If you know that the British majority out there feel a certain way about a topic, so illegal immigration in particular, but net zero. It doesn't matter how I feel. I work for the British public. I should be doing what's best for them. And unfortunately, the last 2 or 3 governments we've had, cloth ears. They don't realise that they work for us, Ian. Yeah. And when we get the opportunity to vote for reform, I think there'll be a reform-led government in the next election. And I think then, I've met Nigel a few times, as I know you have as well, and down the dump and stuff you said before.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I know him mostly through here, but through this job. But yeah, I did see him down the dump tipping up his grass cuttings a little while back.
Yeah, but I think a reform government will listen to the people, the British majority, and I think they'll do what's best, irrespective of ideology. Let's wait and see, eh?
Let's wait and see. Daniel, thank you very much indeed for that. Daniel in Epsom, your thoughts on that? 0344 499 1000. Where did it all go wrong for Keir Starmer? A serious question. Answer objectively if you can. Sally says the answer to your question, suits, glasses, Rwanda. Yeah. I mean, Rwanda was cancelled. There's another great example of the inability to see the wider problem. So when Rwanda was not perfect, of course, and no one will ever know whether it truly would have worked. Yes, it was expensive, but not quite as expensive as what we're doing now with the same story. When he cancelled Rwanda, he cancelled that as if the entire support of the world were behind him. He spoke well, of course we're going to get rid of it. Of course we are. It was ridiculous. It was literally a non-starter. There was no investigation as to, well, could it work? It went against everything he would think. He was absolutely convinced that he had a better way of dealing with it. And what's happened in that time is the problem that Rwanda was purporting to solve. Who knows whether it would have done. I think in its best form, it could have done. He's replaced it with nothing, and the problem has got worse. So where does that... It's that kind of thinking. And the suits and the glasses are not like... they're not the same as Boris's wallpaper. I expect Boris to be in a Who Paid for My Wallpaper scandal. That doesn't surprise me. Keir Starmer told us that that's not us. We're not that party. We don't even know these rich people because we're proud, ordinary people. We represent ordinary people. And then, 5 minutes later, he's walking around in 20 grand's worth of suits and about 3 grand's worth of glasses and spending every other weekend at a Taylor Swift gig. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. 0344 499 1000. More from you on the way. You can voice note or call on that number, or you can message 87222. It's 2:20. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Red says, where did it all go wrong? If Karen Starmer would have stuck to her manifesto, we'd probably all love her by now. Yeah, like Reg. This one comes from Margaret in Birmingham. Where did Starmer go wrong? Well, thinking he was strong, competent, and that he had a backbone. Wrong on all counts. He walked into number 10 with not a clue, and still wearing his human rights lawyer hat. He put party before country, and he kept saying, didn't he, we're putting country before party. Made a big thing about that. That was his whole thing. Party, country before party. And he didn't do that. I'm still astounded that there was no big plan when they came in. They had so much notice of this that they could have had this thing carved out good and proper. They had a general sense of not being the Conservatives. What can we do that the Conservatives wouldn't do? We can do, yeah. And they liked the attack on, as Daniel mentioned, I mean, the landlord thing, the private school thing, the tax on small businesses, all of that stuff very much plays to that kind of left-wingism thing. But there was no seismic plan for growth. There was no real sense that, right, here's what we're going to do. Stay with us. It's going to be a giddy old ride, but don't worry, we've got your backs, and watch this thing grow. There was none of that. Nothing. Darren is down in London. What have you got for us, Darren? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian. How are you? Okay?
Yeah, good, thank you. Fire away.
Good. Right, so, the question you're posing is where did it all go wrong? I actually think for me, because I don't think a lot of us are very partisan. I know someone said the other day about, it's passed on down from your parents about your party. I said, well, my dad always said to me, two things you never speak to people about, son, religion and politics.
Yeah.
And he would never, ever, I still to this day haven't got a clue who he voted.
Seriously?
Yeah, seriously. I mean, he died some years ago and I don't know.
Well, it's funny you say that because I think my dad probably voted Labour, but I don't have any direct evidence of that. It's funny, isn't it?
I think my dad worked for the BBC, and around the time that Thatcher made a lot of cuts, and so certain departments he was 25 years and got made redundant. And I know that I grew up in the 80s thinking that Margaret Thatcher was, being sort of told or listening to Margaret Thatcher being the most evil person going, whereas I've grown up with my own opinion. And my son now is a bit of a Nigel Farage fan. He's 14 years old, but for some reason they all seem to be getting into politics a bit more now, the youngsters.
Yeah.
And I've always said to him, he's going from work experience to a Lib Dem council, actually, by the way, as well. So
really?
he is.
That should be an eye-opener.
He does. I know he does quite like the politics. But I said to him, look, don't ever always listen to what I'm listening to or what I say.
Yeah.
Just try and pull your own opinions in. Get your information in and form your own opinions. But sorry, I didn't need to digress there because what I was going to say.
I think what you said is. By the way, I think it's brilliant that your lad is doing. Is interested in politics. I think that's a great thing to do. My 12-year-old, about 6 months ago, so I said, "What are you doing in history?" And he said, "Margaret Thatcher," and I couldn't believe it. I said, "Margaret, you forget, that she obviously came into politics over 50 years ago." So, and I said, "Okay," and I was really intrigued based on what you've just said, Darren. I said, "So what are they, what's the teacher saying?" He said, we were writing about, she was very divided or something, he said, and, there was good things and there was not such good things, and we're doing a bit of both. I thought, I'll keep my eye on that one, see what they're teaching them.
He talks a lot to his teachers, so he's got a teacher who's a reform. He's spotting the left and right within his own school.
A teacher who's a reform supporter?
Yeah.
I bet the teacher doesn't say that out very loud.
Well, I don't know. I think you can imagine what the staff room must be like sometimes because
they hounded out with lanterns from the staff.
Yeah. Well, I think that the other thing as well, before I get onto my main point, is that there has been this good versus evil since 2016, and that was what I was ringing up about yesterday. I didn't get through, unfortunately. And going back to, and I think that the mainstream media is still pushing that. And that's why, going back to what Daniel was saying about, it will take a phone stolen or a sexual assault for them to change their mind. I don't think it will. I think they'll be very apathetic about phones being stolen, handbags being mugged. I think, this is just modern-day Britain. It won't change their overall opinion, I don't think. And I think that's partly because there's a good versus evil narrative that's been pushed so far. Yeah. So that's why we're so divided. But going back to Starmer and get to my point, sorry if I've laboured this, I think it was the Southport, the riots that preceded Southport killings, the horrible murders. I think that the fact that you've got probably 20 or 30 handful of 50-something ex-football hooligans that got a bit tanked up or maybe, had a bit of snow powder, thought it'd be, let's get back to the old days and chuck some bricks at police. And I don't actually think the police are in massive danger, but yet they were all enforcing riot gear and everything else. And he was able to mobilise the police and judiciary so quickly against the right wing, the threat of the right wing, when there's so many other threats that he doesn't seem to do anything about. And I think that's where he lost.
I think you're right on that. Although, that particular horrendous period of our lives, which we'll all remember, of course, it sort of divides the room. No one's endorsing people throwing things at coppers' heads. I lost count of how many dozen police officers. But what he ended up doing is it wasn't the right wing that hijacked that. It was Keir Starmer hijacked it almost for the left wing. And that's where the big crime, I think, was committed and maybe where the rot set in.
Yeah, and going back to your shoplifting thing very quickly, Ian, sorry, I was sort of racking my brains, sort of working out why Waitrose would have sacked him, and I can work it out or square the circle in such that basically, obviously, employee liability insurance and everything else. So if they've got to sign and you don't do that because obviously our insurance goes up, we're supposed to look after self-care. And also, from a litigious perspective, if someone got bonked on the head, would they? Well,
that's another consideration. If you were the member, if you work for Tesco and there you are, you're Alf, you're stacking pork chops, and then you start chasing a bloke who punches you so hard in the head, and what happens next? A lawyer comes along and says, "Hey, you can sue Tesco for that."
Yeah, you can sue for.
So there's also anymore. And as my mate said, who manages a supermarket, he said, "Is it worth having your face caved in for a bag of pork chops?"
Yeah, but it raises another point, Ian, though, doesn't it? Because if that's what we're scared of, if that's what the managers and the people who are in charge are scared of, then why aren't the police responding?
Well, yeah, you'd think so. Although the very simple answer, as I said, talking about the same manager. When he said back in the day when he started there, he's worked for this company for 20-odd years, so he's now a manager, but he started off stacking shelves. It was that kind of journey, and he said, we used to chase them. He said, we chased them across flipping town. And there must have been a deterrent in that, because you thought you were going to get caught.
Yeah, well, I remember the days when we got to teenagers, if we saw a copper, we'd walk the other side, we hadn't done anything, we're scared.
Yeah.
Now,
absolutely.
And now I see coppers now, and I'm thinking, well, I couldn't imagine them running down the street and chasing someone. Some of them, I just think we got to. Yeah, I don't know. It's difficult to say, but they should be responding. If these so-called shoplifters are, or robbers or thieves are that dangerous, or there's a good possibility or high chance, then the police should be responding, because they're supposed to protect the public and stop these crimes and try and prevent these crimes from happening.
Indeed. Darren, great call. Thank you, mate, for that. Really good to talk. Thank you. David is in Essex. Same question, David. Where did Keir Starmer go wrong? I know that sounds a bit of a funny question, but there's a serious side to this. What are your thoughts?
Well, I can't think there's too many more after that last caller. He pretty named most of them. But, I think it went wrong for him on election night when he got voted in. So many left-wing MPs that trying to get the middle road politics through was just a no-goer. He can't get anything done. He was a lame duck straight away. And, I do agree with you that he is a left-wing politician, but I think to keep a country happy, you've got to go down middle right or middle left.
Yeah.
There's no hard left is never going to work, and they'll be booted out. But also, the other reason, and the one that will not go away, although we're desperately trying to look the great statesman at the moment, is Peter Mandelson. That is a disgrace. How he ever appointed that man.
Yeah.
He humiliated, embarrassed our country. And if I was a Tory, if I was Kemi Badenoch, I'd read back the speech he gave to Boris in the House of Commons when he said, no one will ever trust you again.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was quite a powerful speech at the time, and a lot of us thought, oh, hello, this fella, maybe this guy's quite good. Don't agree with him, but he might be good. And then, of course, he finds himself in that. And the interesting thing about the Mandelson thing, what bothers me most about that, David, I mean, we'll await the full conclusion of everything before we can fully get into it, but I think Mandelson was appointed partly because of his... Not literally because of his association with Epstein, the fact that he had something in common with Donald Trump. I think our government thought that was a good thing.
Ian, when they were, you hear the footage of them both walking down the corridor.
Yeah.
He loved it. He loved to show it in front of the Tories. We've got Peter Mandelson back.
And Mandelson thought he had, what a great retirement gig. One of the most privileged jobs in global politics is an ambassador of a big Western nation. Hong Kong used to be the one. Governor of Hong Kong, Chris Patten, the last governor, of course, was seen to be the totemic job you could have anywhere in politics. And second to that, British ambassador to the USA was always a tasty one to get, and he blew it in about half an hour.
Exactly. And what did he say? He said, it was something like, the Tories don't know Peter, but we know him. He's our friend.
He's our friend. He's just our Peter, something like that. I know he's a bit unconventional. He was knocking around with a sex offender. That's pretty unconventional. When he knew he was a sex offender.
So, to me...
Child sex offender.
Yeah, there's no way back for him.
Yeah.
There's
there's certainly no way back for Mandelson. But you're right. It may be that is arguably more damning than anything. But there's a collection of reasons why he will not last till 2029, that's for sure. David, I've got to run. You've been brilliant. Thank you very much indeed for that. 0344 499 1000. More comment from you on the way. Keep it here. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Lisa says, why no reporting on what's happening in Ireland? Have you been told to keep quiet? Shame on you! It's meant to be the channel of free speech. Well, I mean, it would kind of help which aspect you were talking about when you said Ireland. I mean, is it about a school teacher being in jail for his views on gender? Is it about the fuel protests? But it is kind of curious that Lisa sort of asked the question and then purports, why have we been told to keep quiet about it? If you were talking about this, then there would be no reason why you'd be told to keep quiet about it. Ireland has called in the army to deal with farmers and truckers who've blocked major roads in protest at sky-high fuel prices. It's happening everywhere. Helen McEntee, the Defence Minister, said the use of soldiers to support the police was not the norm, but claimed that escalating disruption has now crossed into criminal behaviour. The Army will deploy 4 heavy-lift recovery trucks to help the police remove vehicles involved in the blockades, which have been in place for 3 days. Jim O'Callaghan, the Justice Minister, said the owners of those vehicles should not complain later about any damage caused during the removal. This comes as after Ireland was hit with the same punishing squeeze on diesel and petrol as Britain and mainland Europe after the war in Iran, with motorists paying €2.20, that's $1.91, for a litre of diesel and as much as €2 for petrol. It's usually the other way around, isn't it? Usually more for diesel. What did I pay this morning at Tesco? $1 for petrol. What was it, 190 or something, 189 or something like 180 something? Yeah, it was definitely 180, 182 maybe. And I remember it being 132 like a few weeks ago, which is a massive jump, right? We were meant to have a guest on at 2:30, and the guest might not be with us because they can't get diesel anywhere. They run out of diesel or something. What's going on? What is going on? So, yes, to reply to the tweet we had from Lisa Parker, I don't know if that's what Lisa is referring to, but why on earth would there be some kind of block on talking about it? It would be a weird thing to not talk about, wouldn't it, if that is what she's referring to. Anyway, yes, that is showing the level of anger about what is happening. But, you know, Ireland, like the United Kingdom, has become a political basket case in recent years. The immigration issue that we discuss here so often has been so out of control in so many areas of Ireland. But again, politicians, similarly, simply don't quite see it as the same. They're just uncomfortable to deal with these issues, or these are human beings. I understand that. We all understand that. We're not stupid. But your duty as a government, whether you're Irish, Welsh, English, Scottish, whatever, is to protect your borders. Paramount. Number one on the list. Hazel in Hampshire. What have you got for us, Hazel? Good afternoon to you. Where did Keir Starmer... Where did Starmer go wrong, Hazel?
Day one. For me, day one.
Oh, day one.
When he stood outside Downing Street and binned the Rwanda plan.
Yeah.
Wasting thousands and millions of pounds, wasting all that time and effort.
Yeah.
And for what? For him to come in and ditch it. And I was furious. I think at least try it. You at least have a trial run.
It's the confidence with which he ditched it, Hazel. That was the other disturbing. It wasn't just ditching it. It was the idea that he thought everybody is in agreement with this. Let's get rid of it.
Yeah, and then you're talking about Ireland. I mean, when that was announced, there was a whole load of them trying to get out of the UK into Ireland, didn't they? Do you remember that?
Yes, absolutely.
All those immigrants.
Yeah, completely. And that's still going on.
Trying to go to Ireland.
Yeah.
So it would have worked.
Yes, well, it showed the deterrent aspect, didn't it? It showed the idea that if you are...
put the wind up, then at least.
Yeah. At least something. I mean, in the absence of anything else, it was probably worth a go, and they'd taken it to a certain level where it was about to start.
Yeah, that's right.
But I think it would have been a bit of a rough... It might have been a rough start. I mean, some say the reason Rishi Sunak called an early election, because he could have waited till, you know, sort of September, October, November or whatever, is because he knew that once the Rwanda scheme started, it might be slow to begin with. And that would have left them open for more criticism. Because the only thing worse than, in a weird way, worse than no planes taking off for Rwanda was one plane taking off for Rwanda, because the optics would have been so bad. But ultimately, it could have worked if they'd done it properly. But it wasn't cheap either, I get it.
No, but it's not cheap having them all coming here either.
Well, no, and I don't know what... I mean, there are many... I mean, people say, well, you can't have the Australian system. It's not quite the same. You kind of could have the Australian system, actually. We've got plenty of islands where you can do. You could have built sort of temporary kind of accommodation, the sort of thing you might build if you've got construction workers working on a site. So you've got cabins, that kind of thing. You could have put a load of those on an island and said, yeah, that's, you know, you're going to be fed, you're going to be watered, you'll be safe, we're not going to hurt you, you'll be warm, all of that, but this is where you're going to be. And you will never be on UK mainland, even if you're approved.
Right.
So
that would be a deterrent as well.
I would have thought so. Hazel, thank you very much indeed for that. Let's go to Karen in North Wales. Karen, what have you got for us? Hi.
Hiya. We've spoken a few times, Ian, and usually I kind of keep it light-hearted, you know, with stories of Kevin Costner's cousin, but not today.
Kevin Costner's cousin was a beauty, by the way. still think about that.
Not today.
Not today.
This man is destroying our country.
Who, Kevin Costner's cousin?
No.
I know, Keir Starmer.
When we put our tick on a ballot sheet, what we're actually saying, it's not a passive act.
Yeah.
What we're actually saying to somebody is, on the balance of probability, I trust you to represent me.
Correct, yes.
I trust you to represent my interests and to reflect what I want. And it became very clear with the whole party, not just Keir Starmer, but he was the worst of them, that they got their noses in the trough, and that was it. It was all about self-interest. It wasn't about the country. But with regard to Keir Starmer, I mean, it's been lots of things is where he's gone wrong. But for me personally, it was from the day that we had Southport, and we were all reeling as a country at the barbarity of what happened. Yeah. And he stood there at a lectern, and I'm not condoning some of the actions of the people that rioted, but he stood there at a lectern and he said anybody who basically objected to what happened.
Yeah. Well, listen, your line, Karen, is a little bit iffy, but do continue. I'll let you know if we lose you altogether, but you might not hear me say it.
He also said that I'm going to make changes, and if you don't like them, there's the door.
Yeah.
He actually people leave their own country. They didn't like what his vision for the country was.
He completely misread the room on that, didn't he? Listen, Karen, your phone line is dying, but the broad brush of what you wanted to say is out there. I get that I know what happened here. I literally know what happened. If you follow the fullness of the story, okay, obviously there was a lot of mischief around Southport in terms of how it was reported, who was responsible. That prompted people to go out with bricks and stones and start beating up and throwing things at coppers. I want my Prime Minister to be very, very forthright about that. The idiocy of believing social media. I mean, the idea that you think, you know, someone on social media has got the answer. I mean, just think about that for a second, you know. Or I've heard from a friend that it's this person. They came over on a boat 2 minutes ago. Just think about who said. Would they really know that info? Would they have that information? Information that the great journalists of our country who have contacts and feelers all over the place, they haven't got that information, but Bobbin Arbroath with a Twitter account apparently has. So it was, to me, it was always completely dubious that that what was reported would be accurate. But here's the difficult part of that story. So, yes, you condemn the rioters, you condemn anyone who's stupid enough to believe conspiracy theories on social media, because many of the people advancing that, you know, if this is true, what I've heard, well, you're saying it's not going to be true because you wouldn't know that stuff. So there it is, right there. So, yes, those that rioted, fine. What then happened was not completely unprecedented, but slightly unusual, is that although that original protest and the throwing sticks and stones and people wanted to set fire to things and bordering up emergency exits on migrant hotels or whatever it was, all of that stuff is bad. We all agree that that is bad. But understandably or not understandably, it then did provoke a genuine debate about immigration. Now, I know the perpetrator of Southport himself was not an immigrant, he was the son of, but it developed into a legitimate debate and disquiet about immigration. And that is the bit that Keir Starmer missed. And he missed it so spectacularly, so offensively, so utterly incredulously, that I think, as many of you have pointed out today, that was arguably the tipping point for Starmer. I know there are many others and people have their own views on that. 0344 499 1000. We are going to continue to take your calls on Starmer. Where did it all go wrong for him? And, of course, that shoplifting special will bring you that. If you haven't heard this or seen this, it's a must-see and a must-watch. Get over to YouTube as well, talkTV YouTube channel, and you can watch the whole thing there. It might be more, you might understand it more if you watch it, but you'll certainly be able to follow it if you're listening. We'll bring you that next on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 10 to 3. Now, we mentioned this a little earlier, videos that we see way too often. Coats rammed, backpacks stuffed with spirits, bottles of beer, steaks, you name it. Balaclavas and hoods adorn the nation's supermarkets. But what is actually being done to stop it? Well, we kind of know the answer. No police around, none on hand, security guards told not to intercept thieves. Well, a Talk exclusive shows just what shops are up against. Have a look and a listen to this.
Over the past 24 hours, I conducted a shoplifting experiment. I went into Tesco, Aldi, Sainsbury's, Marks and Spencer and Waitrose. Now, I conducted this experiment in light of the security guard from Waitrose who was sacked after stopping a shoplifter. I took items off the shelf, I put them into my rucksack, I put my rucksack on my back and I walked straight out the front door. I just want to add that we never planned to permanently steal anything, and we did actually leave a letter inside the shop, which was placed very obviously, and recorded ourselves putting it there with a £10 note inside, explaining what we were doing, just in case things got a little bit heated. So in front of me is Waitrose, and I'm about to head in there and see what happens. So that was Waitrose, first supermarket. I literally openly put the stuff in my bag, barbecue sauce, rice, soy sauce and a tin of kidney beans. I put it into my bag, I nervously walked to the front door, I walked straight out the front door and away we go. So mate, just let you know, I am recording. Yeah. I've just done a social experiment, so I'm not nicking this stuff, but I've put it in my bag. I'm going to put it back. I've left 10 quid on the shelf over there just in case I got caught, but I didn't get caught. Yeah. So yeah, okay. I'm just going to put it back, yeah? Yeah. Cheers mate. Barbecue sauce. All right, just let you know, I've got nothing in my bag. I did walk out of the shop with stuff in my bag. It's part of an experiment that I was doing.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. But I just thought I'd be honest with you and let you know. Take care. Cheers. Okay, here we go. Sainsbury's, shoplift number 2. Got to try and be a bit more obvious this time. I've got my tenner that I'm going to leave in the shop. Sainsbury's, done. I took some fruit juice, milk and pigs in blankets. And I slid underneath the barrier thinking that might sort of attract a bit of attention. I walked out the front door, I waited, and sure enough, nothing happened. Shoplift number 2 done. Time to put everything back. And away we go. Here goes, backpack on. Ready to go into Tesco. Tesco, third time lucky. I took some cereal bars. I took a few other bits and bobs from that same aisle. And I walked straight out the front door, straight through the barrier, past the security guard, and I wasn't stopped again. I did, however, go back in to speak to this security guard. Hi mate, I'm just letting you know, I'm just basically doing a social experiment. So I've just nicked a load of stuff. I'm going to go and put it back now, yeah?
Why are you doing that?
Just a social experiment, mate. You know, in light of what's happened, I've left some money in the shop on the shelf. So I'm just going to go and put the stuff back now, yeah? Yeah?
I don't know what kind of social experience is it?
Well, it's in light of what's happened at Waitrose, you know, the guy being sacked for stopping the guy nicking the stuff. So the guy's been sacked. So basically I've just taken that stuff under the value of a tenner. I've left a tenner in the shop in an envelope, and now I'm just going to go and put it back.
Where's the pen?
I'll show you. So I'll put the envelope there with the money in, yeah?
All right.
And now I'll put the stuff back.
All right.
Yeah? Okay, cheers mate. He just said it's almost impossible to stop. He said even when we do catch them, we can't call the police because the police don't do anything. It's absolutely pointless. The police don't even turn up. Marks and Spencer, fourth time lucky. And yeah, I wasn't stopped again. I went down a few aisles. I took some chocolate biscuits. I put them in my bag. I walked through the tills and straight out the front door, and nobody stopped me. When I did go and tell the security guard what I've done, he was very concerned, and he did actually take a picture of the letter that I'd left in, but he was very understanding about what I was doing, because I did take time, as I did with the other 3, to explain what I was doing and why I was doing it. Hi mate, it's a social experiment in light of what happened in Waitrose, so I'm just letting you know I have left a tenner in the shop. I'm just going to go and put the stuff back that I've just nicked.
Okay.
Yeah, nice one. I'll put it all back, mate, yeah?
Did you nick the food?
Yeah, so I nicked it all. I nicked some food then and walked out of the shop.
When?
And nobody stopped me.
When?
Just now. You can open it if you want. I left that in the shop. So there's a letter to say what I'm doing and £10 notes to cover what I nicked, but now I'll put the stuff back.
Seriously, I was on the route yet. So if we know someone is stealing, yeah? First of all, we have to confirm.
Confirm.
Someone is proper shoplifter, yeah?
Yeah.
So when he went out, yeah. Stop at the door.
Aldi, here goes. Aldi, well, same again. I walked in, I took some squash, some fruit, 3 bottles of fruit juice, right by the tills. I walked through the tills, out the front door, and I wasn't stopped again. I did walk back in, and the shop staff didn't seem too happy with me in this situation, despite me trying to explain what I was doing and why I was doing it.
Lucy Wing, Crime Policy Advisor at the British Retail Consortium, said,
Confronting a shoplifter is a major trigger for violence against store workers. Colleagues are trained on how to de-escalate the situation without putting themselves in harm's way. Retailers welcome the imminent passage of the Crime and Policing Bill, which will strengthen action against offenders, including making assaulting a retail worker a standalone offence and removing the £200 threshold for investigating theft. It is vital the police respond to every reported incident to visibly demonstrate to offenders that all types of retail crime will not be tolerated.
Aldi and Sainsbury's said they were aligned to the British Retail Consortium's statement.
A Waitrose spokesperson said, "There is a serious danger to life in tackling shoplifters. We refuse to put anyone's life at risk, and that's why we have policies in place that are very clearly understood and must be strictly followed. As a responsible employer, we never want to be in a position where we're notifying families of a tragedy because someone tried to stop a theft. Nothing we sell is worth risking lives for."
A Marks & Spencer spokesperson said the safety of our colleagues must always come first. All our security colleagues receive extensive training when it comes to dealing with retail crime, and the focus is very much on deterring crime rather than detaining. We would never want a colleague to put themselves at risk. At M&S, we invest tens of millions of pounds each year to protect our colleagues and our stores.
Tesco did not respond to a request for comment.
Very quiet over there at Tesco. I'm fascinated by this because I didn't really understand we can't chase a shoplifter until quite recently, and it was compounded by, I mentioned talking to a mate who said, we don't want a member of our staff to risk having their face caved in over a packet of pork chops or an Easter egg or something. So I kind of understand that, but simultaneously, this has only increased once emboldened thieves realised no one was going to chase them anywhere. Because in the old days, you would get chased. I remember I worked at Iceland when I was at school. It was a kind of weekend job. And our manager, Mike O'Nions, what happened to Mike? He chased the swines. 0344 499 1000. Right now, let's get the latest news headlines at 3 o'clock.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yes, welcome back. It is the home of common sense. We are majoring in on that poll that shows widespread public demand for immediate political change in this country. Almost two-thirds of voters want Keir Starmer gone. Resign immediately and call a general election, they say. Support for the PM is low, with less than 1 in 5 backing him, but significantly, nearly half of the 2024 Labour voters also want Keir Starmer to step down. But that does beg the question, who do you replace him with? We're asking a wider point here. Where did Keir Starmer go wrong? I know that can be tongue-in-cheek and you can have some mischief with it. Seriously, what was the tipping point? Thoughts on that? Also this afternoon, the Tony Blair Institute is pressuring the government to approve the Jackdaw and Rosebank North Sea oil and gas fields. A new paper from the think tank argues that Ed Miliband should fast-track these projects to combat Britain's energy crisis. We'll have details and response from you. We spoke to them a little earlier. Your thoughts? And widespread shoplifting, as you saw just before the news, is showing thieves with bulging coats and the usual backpacks full of stolen kit, whether it's booze or meat, concealed faces. It's common in supermarkets. Police are not there. Security guards can't confront what has effectively become legalised shoplifting. That Talk exclusive exposed those challenges. Your thoughts, particularly if you work in that field. 0344 499 1000. 4 minutes after 3 o'clock. This one from Dan in Leek says, great show. Where did it go wrong for Starmer? I don't know, but I do know it started going wrong for us on the 2nd of September 1962. The day he was born. Yes, you might you might be right on that, Dan. This one from Suze, who says, where did Starmer go wrong? Born. Many people making that point. Back to fuel. If you paid £1.90 a litre for petrol in London, you're getting shafted. I'm just outside Edinburgh. My local garage is £1.59. Fuel is sold wholesale at the same price, whatever part of the UK it is. So 30p a litre higher is a scam and someone is getting rich out of it. No, I think it was, honestly, it was this morning. Tesco, Sevenoaks. If you're there, tell me. Was it 190 something was the diesel? That's it. 190 something was the diesel. Finn's going to go down there in a minute and check it for me. So it must have been, I'm guessing, would it have been 180 something? I thought it was. We are so bamboozled now with high and rising costs that you do begin to glaze over. But it was costly. I'll check it in a second on me fuel tracker. Let's move to this story. The UK Ministry of Defence has announced that the Royal Navy successfully tracked 3 Russian submarines in UK waters on a mission to interfere with our subsea cables. While some are celebrating the success, others are wary that we got lucky this time, and the UK is always an inch away from infrastructure collapse. Let's speak with Elliot Wilson, military writer, senior fellow for national security at the Coalition for Global Prosperity. Elliot, always good to have you with us. I mean, to say this is disturbing hardly covers it, right? I mean, this is major. We shouldn't gloss over this. This is big.
Well, it's major, but we know it's going on, and we know it's been going on for some time. I mean, the Russians have been putting both surface and submarine vessels through our waters for several years now. I think the distinction we need to draw with this particular case is that 2 things have happened. The first thing is that we monitored the 3 submarines for quite some time, and that's good that we were able to keep tabs on them and know where they were. The second is this slightly more nebulous idea that we deterred them. I mean, clearly we didn't, because they were there. You know, if we deterred them when we confronted the spy ship Yantar back in January of last year, this wouldn't have happened. So clearly the Russians are still feeling able to probe around our waters, but at the same time we're able to let them know that we can see what they're doing.
Yeah. So we're aware that this happens, and arguably gone on forever, Elliot, not new, having a mooch and a little dalliance and a look around other people's business.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's what major states do, and it's what, you know, the great powers have always done. We know, for example, that Russian and before that Soviet submarines were sometimes only 100 miles or so off the coast of the United States. So, you know, this sort of thing does happen. I think what's changed perhaps recently is our awareness of quite how vulnerable we are because of the reliance on undersea cables. I mean, we get 99% of our data, and we also get particularly gas through these cables. If these are interfered with, if they're sabotaged, then we are very vulnerable.
Indeed, and one can reasonably argue that it's more urgent now, perhaps, than it would have been, I don't know, 10 years ago?
Oh, certainly. I think we're in a position where Russia is in a much more aggressive mood, where Putin is willing to up the ante. But I think what we've seen here is exactly what Putin always does. He pushes the limit to find out where we stop. That, for example, when they put Russian drones into Polish airspace last year, he wants to find out what our elastic limit is, if you like, where we'll react, and he takes note of that and uses it for next time. The real problem, of course, is that we have so few naval assets. It's very difficult for us to respond to these on a regular basis.
How do we detect? I mean, a Russian. So I've never quite known how far above the seabed a submarine is. I don't know if you can shine some specific light on that, Elliot. You know, in my head it's 3 centimetres, but I'm sure it's something more like, you know, meters rather than that close. But whatever it is, what have we got out there that can detect that? How do we detect it if it's random?
Well, we can detect them both with our warships and from aircraft as well. I mean, the Poseidon maritime reconnaissance aircraft can pick up submarines under certain circumstances. They'll be several thousand feet under the water at times. I mean, these things do run deep, especially, I mean, these aren't the case for here, but the nuclear ballistic missile submarines run very deep indeed, and of course don't come up for a long time when they're on patrol. But, you know, these will be some way under the water, but we can pick them up. It's good that we've picked them up and been able to keep hold of them for what the Defence Secretary said was several weeks. But as I say, the thing is, they're still there. They haven't gone away. And John Healey's words about saying to Putin, you know, we see you. Well, he saw him 18 months ago, and clearly Putin is relaxed with that. So I think we should be moderately pleased with the capabilities we have, but we don't have enough of them. And I don't think we've made a great breakthrough in diplomatic or political terms here.
Elliot, great stuff. Thank you. Good to talk again. Have a nice weekend. Elliot Wilson, military writer, senior fellow for national security at the Coalition for Global Prosperity. Apparently about 1,600 feet from the seabed, I've just been told. I do like the idea, because when you watch it in a film, they're kind of almost scraping along the seabed, aren't they? Smashing into an octopus's house as they mooch around the bottom of the deep blue, bobbing along the bottom of the deep blue sea. So about 1,600 feet. So it's very low in deep waters, of course. And enough for them to get a gander at our stuff. But is it always going to be enough for us to get a gander at them getting a gander at our stuff, if that makes sense? Big overuse of the word gander. Apologies. 0344 499 1000. No, it was diesel I was quoting at Tesco. I apologise. In my head, I was looking as I was... You know, when you look, when you fill up, it comes up on the pump. But then you also look across at the outside sign. So it's 1.92. This was Tesco at the one I went to, 192, which I imagine is the same everywhere. 192.9, so 193 for petrol, and for unleaded was 158.9. And I remember it being, that's right, I remember it being about 131 not that long ago. So you're talking about an extra 30p almost a litre, which is an extraordinary jump if you're filling up a car, family car, right to the brim. This from Kevin. Oh, I think I read that one from Kevin, didn't I? He says, yeah, in Edinburgh, the local gauge 159, so same as the Tesco one. This one from Pedro. Good afternoon, Ian. Phil from Hearts. Where did Starmer go wrong? It started to go wrong from the moment he opened his mouth and started speaking. That's absolutely right. Dan says, you're spot on, Ian, with the freebies. The age of hypocrisy started then, and Starmer, the U-turn kid, has had failure after failure. Do you know, it's the first time today that the word U-turn has come up. I didn't even mention it, and probably should have done in the monologue at the beginning. But the U-turn thing is in another stratosphere of utter confusion. I mean, how many of them? Man alive, how many of those U-turns? So there's been that, not reading the room. The thing about the suits and the glasses I thought was outrageous, because they made such a big play that we don't do stuff like the Tories do. And even most Tories didn't do that either. I know Boris Johnson had his wallpaper issue. You know, the fact that Boris Johnson knows a few rich people that might buy his wallpaper is of no surprise to anyone. And the Labour Party, Keir Starmer, made it sound like you won't get this kind of stuff on our watch because we don't know these kind of people. We're like you. We're ordinary. Yeah, it was all of that, old cobblers. Colin is in Bolton on Shoplifting. Colin, what have you got for us? Afternoon.
Hi, Ian.
Hiya.
Pleasure to speak to you.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah, no, obviously I hear about all this stuff all the time. And I've spent all my working life, unfortunately, in retail. And obviously it's got steadily worse.
Yeah.
I've been a multi-site manager in the discount and the convenience sector for the past 25, 30 years. So, I mean, I thought the way that the guy was treated where it was a disgrace, really. I think what he needed was somebody to sit down to him and say, well done, chap, but please don't do it again.
But I think Waitrose said in their statement, I don't know if you saw it, Colin, they said there's more to this story than... So whether he'd done it before might be the problem. Possibly. I don't know. Maybe he hadn't, but we'll see.
See, I constantly have to deal with this. So the staff, basically, in the stores, they're basically, they're working for £12 an hour.
Yeah.
And these guys come in and basically take what they want and try. They're not even bothered that you see them anymore. We've got facial recognition in all of our sites now. So they'll then come in with a hoodie on or something so it doesn't pick them up.
Sure.
So they're then filling the bags up with meat and whatever. And they don't really, they prefer it if they don't get spooked, but they're not really bothered if you catch them. It's mainly women who are working in the shop. But the women get involved as much as anybody, to be quite honest.
Sure.
In the northwest of England, the women are quite feisty. So, and the thing is, if you don't do anything, they just keep coming back. And if you do a bit of something, then they go somewhere else, and that's all that we're interested in.
My mate,
they go somewhere else.
But you will know this as well, Colin. My mate said to me, this was about a year ago, they caught a woman. She'd got about 300 quid's worth of shopping in her basket. She did what is apparently a bit of a classic thing of going to the cigarette counter after she'd got her basket full.
Yeah.
Legitimately buying a lottery ticket. She bought a lottery ticket and then she walked out. So she was clocked as somebody who was paying for stuff. They caught her. She didn't resist. They said, could you come with us to the office? So they sat there in the office with a woman. The basket of shopping is outside. She's there. They ring the police. The police say, is the woman compliant? They say, yes. So there's no urgency. We'll come to you at some point over the afternoon. Now, you know this. You can't keep that woman there. She can leave if she wants.
Yeah.
So that's it, isn't it? That's end of.
Yeah. That side of it is end of now, because what used to happen back in the day is that we'd get them in the security office.
Yeah.
We'd ring the police and tell them that they were creating a hell of a racket and an hassle. And the police would be there in minutes. Back in the day, when all was good and Margaret Thatcher was ruling the world,
Yeah.
But now.
Why is that? What was the point that the police went? We used to turn up every time, and now we don't turn up at all.
Well, it's due to constant cuts. But I mean, basically, the problem we've got in retail is that the staffing is cut all the time. It's cut and cut and cut and cut and cut. And we have to get the apples on the shelves. We have to get the bread on the shelves. And it doesn't matter how much they cut your hours. You still got to do it in the hours that you've got.
But the police have got as many. But the police have got as many officers as they used to have now.
Yeah, I know.
So what? And we've all had that moment when you walk in. I can remember walking into a supermarket. Every now and again, you'd see somebody walking out in a pair of handcuffs, with a copper each side of them.
Yeah.
And you go, all right, shoplifter. You'd see that, a fair bit. You just don't ever see that now.
They do not turn up at all. The only way that you can get the police to be slightly interested if you like a dog with a bone. So basically, you put in a report online. You can't get through on the phone now, so it goes online. You go back into it and say, you've not done anything about this. And what I've started doing is getting hold of the superintendent, because you can put a complaint in. And normally you'll get a superintendent to ring you up within 40 minutes because they don't want that complaint escalating.
Yeah.
So that's the only way. But the problem is that the staff haven't got the time to do all this
Yes,
work
so there is a
because they're on their own.
I'd never thought of it from that perspective, that actually supermarkets themselves, those that work within it, are kind of, fairly snowed under. Maybe a few years ago there'd have been more of you, and you would have had the scope to, I don't know, follow somebody around, for example.
Yeah, you would have. I mean, we've got CCTV and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So there are other things, but ultimately, they're not bothered about that. They just come in and get what they want.
Yeah.
But you see, it's just a different time and a different place, and that's what's happening. Basically, the stores really have to, follow it up. And because, I mean, one of the big problems we've got in retail is that the staff are getting paid more money, and that's why the hours are getting cut, because they were never getting paid like this amount of money before.
Yeah.
And so the hours get cut, and you don't take anybody on. That's what's happening in a lot of things.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah,
Listen.
But what I would say in the just to the end is that when we go on about chasing shoplifters, I did it all my life, and then about 15 years ago, I did it stopping somebody who grabbed a load of money out of a till, and there were 4 of us who got him, and then he had a knife in his hand, and he stabbed me, and he stabbed somebody else who ended up it went into his kidney, and he had to have an operation. So I can see it from our point of view. I never want to have that conversation with somebody's dad again, that he's jumped on a shoplifter and he's in hospital.
You see. So you can understand the reason why that policy exists. I get it, Colin. Listen, I've got to move, but you've been brilliant, very insightful stuff. Thank you to Colin. We're going to talk to Matt in just a second in Cheshire. Don't go away, Matt. 03444991000. Cliff in Berkshire says, out of interest, has our media been told not to cover the fuel protests in Ireland? If our government worried about these protests, should be if our government, what I'm saying, if our government were worried that these protests might spread to the... No, I have never, ever, in 30 years of doing this job, ever been told not to say something, anything, other than libel. I'm only putting that out there. And certainly not if the government said, don't mention it in case, The only things you can't mention are embargoes, which aren't embargoed for a coup. I've just got a government embargo. I can tell you it's embargoed until midnight on Sunday night, Monday morning. There you go. A Home Office embargo sitting right in front. I'm looking at it now. Do you know what it is? I'll tell you. No, I won't. Nothing would... What would really happen if I broke that, Finn? I mean, seriously. It's just a story we'll probably cover on Monday. Oh, by the way, I'm doing the breakfast show for the next 2 weeks, so we will definitely cover it on Monday. Mark Dolan's going to be here for 2 weeks. 2 whole weeks. Jezza's in his hammock in Barbados, and I'll be there. So make sure you join us Monday morning, 6 a.m. For the Talk Breakfast Show. There's a lot going on already for that show on Monday, and I'm sure this embargo I'm looking at will be part of it. It's not spectacular, but it's an interesting little story. But no, on the wider thing, I can never recall a time when anyone in the newsroom has said, please don't mention this because it might be sensitive, that you have to be responsible with your reporting, but no government should be able to stop you reporting a story, even if it might have a knock-on effect, because that would just be governments curtailing the news. But I do read regularly on social media, it says, there's a... they've put a... What's the name of the word when you can't say... There's a D notice, that's it. I don't think one has ever existed in my career. I vaguely remember hearing a story from some guy on Fleet Street who told me a little while back that there was something back in the day. But that would have to be something absolutely... It's never to hide someone's little secret or their dirty... It's never that. There are such a thing as super injunctions. Again, that's a different thing as well. But no, it's one of those stories, Cliff, to be honest with you. It just didn't penetrate the zeitgeist. It didn't get through, really. Cut through is the phrase. But it kind of has now. We mentioned it a little while ago, and I hope that clarifies that point. But Cliff's not the only one that asked, so thank you, Cliff, for that. 0344 499 1000.
We genuinely are on resignation watch. There is absolutely no doubt about it. Labour MPs, they say, listen, Keir, your position is untenable. This is all about appointing that rat, Peter Mandelson, who faces a criminal investigation.
Can Keir Starmer survive the Mandelson scandal? We have breaking news for you. We've just been talking about, of course, Morgan McSweeney, the Chief of Staff. We've now had another resignation from Number 10. And Keir Starmer's Director of Communications, Tim Allen, has now also resigned. The plot is thickening. The noose is tightening.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
On the wider point, though, of kind of public disquiet, Cliff is absolutely... There is a point about certainly rioting, and not that what's happening in Ireland is a protest, but rioting and protesting is contagious. You know, we've seen it with loads of things. Look at the 2012 London riots that kind of spread firstly from one part of, police station in North London, and it spread throughout London, and then it was in, half an hour later, it was in Croydon. Which, for those who don't know, is completely, technically not even in London, but so it spread like wildfire, and then it spread across the country as well. And protests do have that happen, and that was kind of the problem with Southport, is that there was, riots began to pop up in other places that were sort of slightly distinct from people who genuinely wanted to protest about immigration, which had been a kind of knock-on effect of the horrors of what had happened after Southport. And understandably so. Matt's in Cheshire. Back to Starmer. Matt, where did it all go wrong for Sir Keir? Afternoon.
Very good afternoon, Ian. Just a really quick one on what you were just talking about previously.
Yeah.
I used to work in a magistrate's court, and continual thieves used to get warrants for their arrest.
Mm-hmm.
The charges would build up, they would be fined. Obviously, they had no money because they were thieving in the first place.
Yeah.
Then it would all lead up to a 6-week prison sentence, which they would do 4 weeks of, and then it all would start again. So a 2 or 3 year period would end up in 4 weeks in prison.
Yeah.
Then it'd all be quashed and all start again. So basically, it's a merry-go-round of insanity and encouraging them to keep doing it.
Completely. Yeah.
And that was 20 years ago.
Yeah. It's the word merry-go-round is absolutely bang on, right?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I just thought, wow, is this what happens? Is this the justice system? So, and that obviously it's much worse than that now.
Of course.
As for Start, as you know, Ian, I've been ringing Talk for a few years now.
Yep.
And without any ego or sort of conceit, I did say that Labour were going to be an absolute disgrace without any doubt in my mind whatsoever. Starmer is basically a mouthpiece for the Manchester MPs that control the Labour Party. Rayner, Lucy Powell, previously Rebecca Long-Bailey, Andrew Gwynn, and Andy Burnham as well. They're all like a big clique, and he's basically their mouthpiece. He never had any control over what was going to happen. He was just pushed out there like a rabbit in the headlights. And the winter fuel payment was that was it.
Yeah.
It was over then. It was like every pensioner in the country and their family just went, you just insulted my grandmother and taken money off my grandmother and give it to illegal immigrants. So he was doomed from that moment, Ian.
Yeah.
And everything we've seen since is just the spite of the Labour Party.
Is it? But is that stuff Is it worse because we talk about it incessantly? Is it a big social media continues to fuel it? Everything's 24 hours a day, whereas once upon a time, you know, not that long ago, you woke up in the morning, waited for a newspaper to turn up through your letterbox, or you went and bought one, and that's when you saw the news, and then maybe at 6 o'clock in the evening you might see it on the telly, so that was the end of it. You'd have the odd debate about it with some mates, but now it's... and if you're a consumer of news, as you are, I am, and lots of people listening to this are, it's just never away from you, is it? It's there all the time, and everyone's got an opinion. The debates are... like all over the place. We're having a debate today about where did it go wrong for Keir Starmer. This debate is probably going to happen in different forms in 30 places today.
I think since COVID, Ian, everyone has become more politically engaged and more engaged on every issue because they worry about what's happening. And Labour, they were so excited to win. They were like a child who would weed the pants. They couldn't wait to get in, and they just forgot, oh, my God, somebody put us in here. They had no idea what they were going to do. They just ran in there full of excitement, thinking, oh, my God, we didn't expect to win, but now we're here. And they completely forgot about the voters.
Yeah. Absolutely precisely that. Great call, Matt. Thank you very much indeed. It was the idea. They didn't... I mean, they began towards the end of their last election campaign to think, oh, we might have got this. But after 14 years in opposition, suddenly they were just absolutely drunk and high on the win. And nobody... I thought what Dan Hodges said to us earlier is that he spoke to a minister, a Labour minister, about 5 days after the election, who said it's falling apart, which is hilarious. So, really? You've just got the... no plan. No one knows they're going into these big government buildings. Right, OK, you're in charge now. What do you do? Don't know. Do I need a policy on this? Don't I need to think? It was all over the place, and it's continued to be so, and much of it has been danced out in public. The U-turns that we mentioned, the horrific stories, issues around, you know, Starmer's position globally. I mean, the whole sad list goes on. We'll have more from you in just a few moments. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
The UK on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. This one from Margaret. No, I read Margaret's. Apologies. This one from Sandra, who says, good afternoon. Don't think Starmer's gone wrong because I don't think he's ever gone right. My words when he has won was heaven help us. Yeah, heaven help us, is about right, isn't it? There really is that that sense. I did think it wasn't a case of falling for it. I think everybody, Dan Hodges said the same thing a little earlier. Giles Dillnot said the same thing a little earlier as well, is that everybody was working on the assumption that Keir Starmer, even if you didn't like him or his politics, in opposition, he was making a lot of noises. I mentioned to a previous guest that when it came to Israel, for example, and Israel's response to October 7th, Starmer was more was louder about that than Rishi Sunak was. And I remember thinking this is not the usual order of events, if you like. So that to me was kind of interesting. Right, okay, so that sort of suggested more of a Blair-like approach to government. And then, of course, the little matter of the fact they've been in opposition for so long, and Keir Starmer, even if you hate the guy, nobody disputes he's probably quite intelligent. You know, he's got a legal brain, he's forensic, he stood there in front of juries at the Bailey and goodness knows where else and argued cases for the defence and the like. So, he knows how to speak, he knows how to put a coherent case together. He's got to at least be good, even if you don't support what he's good at. And on top of all of that, of course, he became the Director of Public Prosecutions, the most senior job there is in the law. So there must be a kind of Blair Brown-like plan. And I think most people reasonably thought that. Maybe not as publicly seismic as the Blair and Brown one. We knew leading up to 1997 that Blair had rejigged the relationship with the unions. We know they'd plonked the word new in front of the word Labour. So they'd made it very public that things were going to change. And then when they got into office, things did change. The autonomy of the Bank of England, I think, happened on day 1 or 2, and various other things followed suit. Again, you might not have liked it, but there was a plan. So we reasonably thought this is the sort of... It's got to 14 years in opposition. Starmer's been there, 5 years at this point as leader of the Labour Party. This is going to happen. Something similar is going to happen. And we waited and waited and waited, and then we got an announcement that, winter fuel allowance was being cancelled for freezing pensioners. What? Hang on. And those kept coming and coming and coming. The woeful response to Southport and what followed, and the miserable list goes on. 0344 499 1000. Let me just remind you, by the way, big weekend for sport on talkSport. It's got it covered. The whole thing is covered, left, right and centre. Live commentary of the Grand National, extensive updates on the US Masters Golf, and the return, of course, of the Premier League. Kicking off this evening, that crucial game. This is so darn crucial. If you're a Forest, Spurs or West Ham supporter, this is crucial, because it's West Ham Wolves tonight. It doesn't matter for Wolves, they're gone. But it definitely matters for West Ham. talkSport will have exclusive commentary of table toppers Arsenal against Portsmouth on Saturday lunchtime. So top, bottom, the whole kit and caboodle. And of course the Grand National is live, 4 o'clock Saturday afternoon from Aintree Racecourse, and a special watch-along on Fight Night for Tyson Fury's return to the ring from 9 o'clock. That can be watched live on the Talk Boxing YouTube channel. So get over to that as well. It's big. Lots going on. 0344 499 1000. But not everybody's a fan of the Grand National, of course. We know only too well that Green leader Zach Polanski wants horse racing banned. Don't like the racing, says Zach. Yeah, ban it. Wow. Let's speak with Mo Metcalf-Fisher, External Affairs Director of the Countryside Alliance. Mo, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. Good to see you as always.
And you too. He doesn't do things by halves, old Zach. He was straight out with it. Let's ban horse racing. Goodness me. I don't know what the man's thinking. We know, however, that the Grand National has sometimes over the years been contentious. It's changed a lot in that time, but I don't think banning horse racing is the answer.
No, absolutely not. It's an extreme view to have, in my opinion. I think banning it would be absolutely catastrophic for the countryside. And for somebody who I think says a lot about culture wars and how he dislikes them, I'd say that he's fueling one with sentiments like that. It's demonising an entire community of people, thousands of people employed directly in the industry, but also across lots of other industries too as a knock-on effect. It's massive for the rural economy, a huge part of the social lives of many, many people, not just in the countryside, Ian, but in the big towns too. I think it's a bizarre position for him to take, and particularly, you know, he represents, or the Green Party have an actual parliamentary seat in Suffolk, which, as you know, is an important county for horse racing. So I wonder what sort of message that sends to the people of Waveney Valley in Suffolk. I hope that the Green Party and Zach Goldsmith, Zach Perlance, forgive me, Zach.
There's only
Zach,
two.
Mr.
There's only two
Perlansky?
Zachs in politics, and you got them both right there. So.
Well, I'll take them both on.
All right,
Mr. Polanski reflects on his comments and talks to the industry, actually learns a little bit more about it and all of the amazing work that the sector puts in to equine welfare. They spend huge sums and care passionately about the welfare of the horses.
I mean, I sense, Mo, this is kind of a little bit in the kind of Blair fox hunting ban territory. There is a sort of snobbery here. And although, you know, working class people enjoy the races as much as anyone else, you know, putting a bet on and sitting there has been the kind of a staple, if you like, of, you know, what us ordinary people do. But
I think it's out of touch, Ian.
Yeah, I think it's out of touch. I think it's out of touch because I can see a sort of a Green Party leader thinking it's all about rich people and champagne and ascot and millionaires and rich members of royalty that own horses and paddocks and that kind of stuff. I sense it sort of comes from that place.
It's just puerile, Ian. It's as I say, it's part of culture war. You know, and for someone that talks about the, you know, needing to get passion and compassion back into politics, I just think it's a really nasty thing to do and to campaign on. I really hope that Mr. Polanski spends a bit more time talking to the industry and finding out about all the amazing work they're doing and actually going out and meeting people that enjoy racing. I'm sure he'd be well received and he could put a bet on. I hope he does better than I do.
Absolutely right. Listen, Mo, thank you very much. Enjoy the Grand National tomorrow. Mo Metcalfe-Fisher, External Affairs Director at the Countryside Alliance. Thank you to him. Back to you. This comes from Sarah in London. Says, Ian, my dad was a petrol tank driver. In the year 2000, they were protesting and petrol stations were dry. You probably remember. Yeah, I do too. This was, of course, Blair, wasn't it, that copped a lot of this. Those protests were happening all across Europe, but it was never reported on the news here because it would have, pardon the pun, added fuel to the protest. The tanker driver and the fuel industry community all knew it was a European protest, but it wasn't known because the internet wasn't very big back then. We may not have an embargo, but call it whatever you want. It's certainly not reported when the government don't want it reported. I mean, that's not strictly true because that would suggest the government would have to tell the news not to report it. And the government don't create the news. No, even those of us that work in news can never quite fathom the journey of a story that starts out very small and then gets rather big. But I mean, something like the protest. I remember the protest back then happening in Europe. There is that sort of, sometimes to the detriment of the media, where you look at a story and go, well, it's in France or it's in Spain. It's not affecting us. So it doesn't really become something. There's no more to it than that. It's not like, oh, the government have told us or anything like that. The government can't stop you talking about it. Things like that. Iran was a great recent example, by the way. A lot of the media were late to the party on Iran. I came into work, this is a couple of months ago now, and said to Finn, our producer, I said, I think we should do something on Iran. There are protests happening. Now, I only picked that up because I'd seen, this is the good part, if you like, of social media, which I constantly question. But I also acknowledge the benefits, where there were people saying, look, these are genuine protests going on in Iran. And I think a lot of journalists would have seen it and gone, well, it's a protest in the Middle East, so what? You don't need to take this as, it's not going to go anywhere. But it did, and we ended up getting Iranian voices on a regular basis before all of this, of course, really kicked off. But I think the Iran thing suffered the same fate initially as the protests in Europe, is that it just wasn't seen as a very relevant story. Yeah, it's all right. I can see news editors going, yeah, do you really think Bobby Arbroath gives a toss about some protests in Iran? And the answer is probably not at that level, at that stage. Let's go to Charlie in Reigate. Back to Keir Starmer. What are you thinking, Charlie? What have you got for us? Hello.
Ian, we've never spoken before. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right. Where have you been? In jail or something, Charlie? Where have you been? Why have we not...
Listen, you don't want to know.
yeah, I touched a nerve there, maybe. That was your past.
I mean, it all fell apart when he started telling lies, didn't it? I mean, it started off about all the freebies, the clothes and the glasses from Lord Alley, staying at his flat in Covent Garden, and he wiggled out of that one, didn't he?
He did.
Then it was, I mean, it's a toss-up really between the pensioners and Rwanda, the second one. I mean, Rwanda would have got him out of trouble, really, wouldn't it? I mean, he counselled Rwanda just as a two fingers up to the Tories. It was a good idea. It was somewhere to send them. They would have been safe, but all these backbenchers wouldn't allow him to do that. He was lent on, really, wasn't he, by all his cabinet. Southport, when he called us all far right, just for saying what everybody in the country was thinking.
Somebody must... I can't believe there wasn't an advisor around him that said, right, Prime Minister, you can give a proper pounding to rioters who are beating up police officers. Do that, but
they weren't beating up police officers.
Well,
it was just a...
No, but there was a massive amount of hospitalised coppers over Southport. But that's... Yeah, but he could have acknowledged that, and then acknowledged the fact that there is a question mark about immigration. He could have done both, but he didn't.
If you break it down and you look at how all the protests have gone, most of the trouble that's coming out of these protests are from Antifa, or from the left. They've come, and let's face it, they're carted in by the police. They're shipped in. They're shipped in to cause the trouble. And
well, they're not shipped in to cause the trouble. They're allowed to go in, but they're shipped in.
Well, they were taken in by all the police, weren't
they? They're guided in because the police want to make sure they're in the right place and not the wrong place, because there'd be a bigger riot otherwise.
Why would you do that? But why would you do that when people...
Because if you don't, you have a bigger riot. If you speak to somebody who works in riot control, weird as it sounds, it oddly does work, but it's a terrible... You're right, it's a terrible look, Charlie.
Look, I go back to a couple of years ago when we had... look, I'm going off the subject, but Remembrance Day. Me and all the lads, we went to a Remembrance Day. We've done the 2-minute silence. We went to the pub. An hour later, 100 coppers steamed into 2 pubs and nicked 150 of us for having a beer. But we was all far right, you see. Next day, they had 152 far right thugs. They didn't nick us. They just arrested everybody, took us all to all the police stations around London, and then just disbanded us. I think that was Sadiq Khan. That was because the next day... what was her name? The Home Secretary. She got sacked.
Which one?
Was her name? Oh, blimey.
Theresa May, Jackie Smith.
No. She's at Reform now.
Oh, Suella Braverman.
Suella, yeah. The next day, Suella got sacked because she called it a hate march. Listen, we're standing the free card trick with this government and all the left that support them. With everybody you talk to at work, everybody's sick of them. I mean, God knows how Sadiq Khan gets voted in. Listen, I'm from London. I don't live there now. I've never met anybody that voted for him. Everyone I know can't stand him. Absolutely despises the man. And Keir Starmer, I mean, look, listen, if he ain't in Davos, I don't know what he's doing there. He spends more time in... It's a bit sassy, isn't it?
More time on the plane than he does in here, yeah. Let me ask, Charlie, what's your football team?
I'm an Arsenal supporter, through and through, Gooner. I was a season ticket holder up until COVID, and you either had to pay your 11 grand a year to keep your ticket on, or keep food in the fridge. So we sort of gave
cracking Southampton match though, wasn't it, last weekend? What an absolute beauty that was.
Drop it out.
Carabao Cup week before.
Painful that was, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, I think. Don't worry. I think on a serious. I think you're kind of home and dry. If Chelsea Muller City on Sunday this weekend.
It ain't over.
No, I know. I get it. Listen, good to talk, Charlie. You take care. Have a cracking weekend. 0344 499 1000. Lots to get through. More calls and comments on the way. Coming up on 10 to 4. This is Talk.
Brand new for 2026. It's going to be the only way to start your day. It's the home of common sense. It's where the nation can come to speak about the day's news. It's the Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show. You know who you are. You get up, you graft, you work hard. I'm here for you. We want to hear your side. Promise you one thing. It is where the nation can and will come to talk. The Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show, weekdays from 6 a.m.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. 0344 499 1000. Let's do some more calls. Georgina is down in London. Georgina, I know you've been a big Keir Starmer fan since day one. Somewhat of a hero, of political hero, I suppose you'd say, of yours. So I don't imagine you think it has gone wrong for him.
Well, it's not going to get any better anytime soon.
No.
I mean, I think Keir Starmer's premiership went catastrophically wrong as soon as he entered number 10, because he's a man who had no love or regard for either our country or our population, Ian. He's a little man who was inebriated by power. It went wrong when he made it his mission to erase our national identity in favour of a globalist agenda. It went wrong when he gone heck for leather to get us back into the EU. It went wrong when he took the British public for idiots, thinking they would believe his lies and overlook his deceit. It went catastrophically wrong when he put in place a two-tier judicial system. It went wrong when he welcomed a tidal wave of illegal migrants into our country with incentives that would make anyone want to swim the channel to receive them, never mind come over in a boat. It went wrong when he made shoplifting legal and we are made to pay the shortfall with higher prices. It went wrong when he force-fed us cultural enrichment and cultural cohesion, both of which have been total disasters within our social structure and have caused unbreachable divisions within our nation. It went wrong when he betrayed our farmers, our waspy women, and over 250,000 children who've been abused by men from cultures where this kind of behaviour is deemed normal. It went wrong when he made it normal for those who don't want to work, get more in benefits than those who get up at the crack of dawn every morning, slog their tripe out day after day monotonously, and give half their wages to keep illegal migrants, pay for net zero madness and ridiculous DEI ideologies. It went wrong when he ignored the request for our main ally to use the air bases in Britain, even after our base in Cyprus had been bombed by our enemies. It went wrong when he gave jobs to the boys knowing full well their past form, then pleading plausible deniability when the scandals were brought to the fore. It went wrong when he allowed Ed Miliband to stop us drilling for our own oil and gas, even though our country is on the verge of bankruptcy, and we have to revert to paying top dollar for both from other countries. This man has made the Labour Party and our country an international joke and embarrassment. In short, Ian, this man is a walking disaster area and should never have been placed in such an important, powerful position, and he should never hold another position of high responsibility ever again.
Other than that,
I think, you know what, Ian...
You've got nothing else? You've got to come prepared for a call on national radio, Georgina. Come on. You have to think about what you're going to say, come up with an argument that we can follow. Listen, that was seriously a great list. We asked the question, where did Keir Starmer go wrong? You brilliantly answered it, and I'm pretty sure that you could have probably gone on longer if we'd all sat and thought more about it.
I could go on all day, and I hate to be so vicious to one of my own species, but the man has done himself no favours from the off. Starting with cutting the heating benefits for the elderly people. He was doomed from that moment on, and it's just got progressively worse.
Yeah, certainly has. Georgina, lovely. Thank you very much. Have a cracking weekend. Sadly, winter has kind of come back, hasn't it? We've had 1.5 days of summer. Brits being Brits start planning barbecues. You just know that on... What were the really hot days? Wednesday was a hot day, wasn't it? And Tuesday and Thursday morning. And then after that, I messaged Finn, our producer, about 4 o'clock. I said, it's freezing. It suddenly went from like 25 degrees to about 10 degrees in 24 hours. But during that point when it was hot, you absolutely know there would have been probably a few hundred Brits who literally messaged their friends and said, fancy a barbecue this weekend. But really, have you not looked at the weather? It's pretty ropey again. It's now, I think, quite cold for this time of year. It's gone the very opposite. But there it is. That is kind of what we do as Brits, isn't it? We tend to... We get a bit carried away as soon as there's a bit of sunshine. But now it's got a little bit chilly again. This comes from Chris, who says, all the stealing started years ago in Woolworths at the pick and mix. We're all guilty. Do you know, I have to say, I was never a big... Woolworths is such a weird shop. I could never work it out because you'd walk in and the pick and mix were almost right in front of you when you first went in. And then on the sides there was a few games and toys. Then they had a CD collection because they sold music. And then at the back they sold gardening stuff, Kev, didn't they?
Well, that was the point about Woolworths. I mean, it was a cultural shock for people of a certain age when Woolworths went out of business because it was just a staple in every high street and you could buy absolutely anything there. And you're right about the pick and mix. I probably shouldn't say this, but every kid, you ran in because they put the pick and mix quite near the doors. You ran in, grabbed a handful and you ran out.
Do you know, you see, you come from...
I still do that at sweet shops, but...
Yeah, he's known for it. Yeah. He was one of the ones with the blurred faces in that video.
I don't do that anymore, ladies and gentlemen.
No, indeed. What is happening after 4, Kev?
Some of the big stories. Melania, what is going on there?
That was so weird.
And I'll tell you something. If you want to know about fake news, Donald Trump is claiming he knew nothing about it, didn't know she was going to make that statement.
That's nonsense.
What a
no
lot
way
of
the
crap.
wife of the President of America in the White House makes a speech and he doesn't know about it.
The President doesn't know that she's making a speech to the world.
Was it preemptive in some way? Is there something coming around the
something
corner?
is coming up.
Yeah.
We'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about the world's worst ceasefire, the Strait of Hormuz.
The world's worst ceasefire.
But this is